good morning, and welcome everybody to the Fantasy and Frames pregame show for Week 12. I'm your host, Jorge Edwards. With me, we got the usual cast and crew here of Nate Markham, Jonathan Klonowski. Let's start with you, Jonathan, over in the UK. You've been up for a while. You've been up for the longest. How are you doing today?
Yeah, not too bad. Not too bad. I was going to say I didn't particularly enjoy the World Cup game on Friday, and there would have been absolutely no chance of me turning up for this if the US had beaten England. Absolutely no chance that I would have turned up.
Yeah, what was the going joke here? If the US wins, it's forever known as soccer, not football. And the rest of, yeah.
I also saw a few tweets saying that whoever loses has to keep James Corden. So, so I'm not sure if it's a draw. But he's just like somewhere floating in the middle of the Atlantic or something. But
yeah. he's the Atlantic Ocean purgatory.
He's just doing carpool karaoke by himself in the middle of the
life draft karaoke.
Yeah, exactly.
Which, by the way, speaking of the World Cup and shenanigans, did you all see the massive brawl between England fans and Wales fans? Like, this was like Barstool. It was like straight out of the World Wrestling Entertainment, like Barstool swinging, hitting, chucking at other people, just a massive melee.
Yeah,
very, very, very scary.
People are very frustrated,
awesome.
But yeah, they're
very awesome to see from an entertainment perspective. Hopefully, everybody was okay. Although I doubt it. These people could be hitting. It was something. Nate Markham, how you doing, man?
Good. Just we get the holiday week wrapped up. A little bit of football, and we got 2 weeks left for regular season playoffs, realistically, or right till the playoffs at least.
Yeah, this is going by so fast, and we've loved each and every week answering all of your start-sit questions, folks, as well as going through every game here on the pregame show. And yeah, like, we're getting you ready for your fantasy playoffs. Like, this season has probably been one of the most ugly seasons in recent history when it comes to injuries, when it comes to availability of players, when it comes to underperforming. I want to say prior to week 8, there was somebody, I want to say it was Michelle Magic from Ball Blast, who said that she did the number crunching. And at that point in time, it had been the lowest scoring overall in terms of points fantasy football season in recent memory. I want to say within the last 6 years. So that's crazy. But we've been here along the way to help navigate you to victories, hopefully, and seem to be doing a good job of that. Speaking of good jobs, got to congratulate all the crew here. We were working. We have been working tirelessly trying to get our Instagram page going, getting all our article content transcribed into image content, and the good folks at Roto Underworld, aka Player Profile, have been seeing that for the past month. And a very large brand, really heavy into stat analysis, Dynasty, you name it. One area that they did not touch upon too much has been IDP. And of course, Nate and I, we handle the IDP written content on the website, as well as all the graphics. And then, of course, we have the Shoot the Gap podcast, where we have Mike Waller from 4 for 4 and Hollywood Titan from IDP Nation join us. And anyhow, so the contact over at Roto Underworld reached out to us, and we now have a partnership with them for the rest of the season. We'll be doing joint IDP coverage, giving you some good starts and sits at DL, LB, and DB going forward. So we're really excited about this. We got really good reaction from the IDP community about this. It is a small niche, but at the same time, if one of us succeeds and helps to push IDP into the mainstream, all of us really are the ones who succeed. And so we're happy to be a part of that and to help all you IDP fans, get more exposure, and the content creators to get more exposure. So really, really proud of that. We'll be doing that, like I said, throughout the rest of the season and hopefully going forward. Nate, maybe you want to speak on that a little bit. What have you heard around the water cooler?
I mean, that's exactly what you're saying. It is. It's a positive momentum swing in the. And I don't know if there's any correlation to the offensive scoring being down. Maybe the defensive scoring is up, and maybe IDP has a little trajectory in the positive as far as scoring goes. But I think it's just the tides shifting a little bit, and I think there's just again, every year there's more and more players and more people wanting to dip their toe in the deep end or in the shallow end or in a different end. Let's put it that way. And I think that it just in a super saturated environment that fantasy football can be, you got to try to carve out that little niche every now and then if you want to, at least if you want to have some more positive progress. And I think that's maybe kind of one of the catalysts here.
No, 100%. And so we'll keep doing our part to help bring that into the limelight, as well as, do our part for all the different aspects we cover here at Fantasy and Frames, whether it's redraft, IDP, Dynasty, DFS, the guys over the Daily Fix. They have been crushing it all year long. And if you haven't, head over to our Instagram, as well as our Twitter accounts and Facebook accounts. You'll see all their bargain and median and expensive tier plays for the rest of the Week 12 lineups today. Just great stuff by Keith and Joe. So we should be getting Keith on pretty soon. Later on in the show, however, we're going to be joined by a friend of ours that we met at the Fantasy Football Expo. Nate, is it Polvgotz, I believe is the proper pronunciation?
Yeah.
So from In Between Media, he's also with Roto Underworld. And so he's going to be joining us today and hopefully going forward a few episodes here as we get closer to the end of the season. And we have a few other surprises lined up here coming on the show. So it's going to be, not today, but going forward, subsequently going forward for the future pregame shows. So we're really excited. But as we do every week, folks, if you're watching, if you're listening, send us in those start-sit questions. We're going to get them all answered for you today. And we're going to go one by one through each game, talk about all the fantasy relevant players. And so let's get into it, guys. I was desperate for a running back in one of my leagues, and I drank the Kool-Aid on Leonard Fournette, and I was so desperate that I had to make a trade. And so it was a multiplayer trade, but basically it involved Cooper Kupp, me giving up Cooper Kupp for insert running back depth, including Leonard Fournette. Turns out neither of us won. In hindsight, that probably was a little bit too expensive for me, and that's my mistake, lesson learned. But he's declared out this week. And before we keep going, talking about that, we got a question here already on YouTube. What's going on? My most ballsy question, love it. Should I sit Russell Wilson and start Rachaad White or Michael Carter in my Superflex spot?
So the only way I would really even start to consider assuming it's a 4-point passing league, it's the only time I'm ever my rankings start to meld a little bit more into offensive players is when it's only 4. Because if it's a 6-point passing league, it's a little more, the separation is sometimes too high in a super flex, even though we hate Russell Wilson and we want him to fail. And not really, but you get the idea. He's let so many down. I love the Rachaad White start this week. I really do. I think that it's at the end of the week, I think that Carolina and Denver game is just going to be sloppy. I don't think there's going to be a ton of scoring. And I feel like Rachaad White has a chance to put up, honestly, more than Russ Wilson. But if it's 6-point, I still probably have to go Wilson. Jorge, Jonathan.
This is really difficult. And I think it's a really important point to bring up, that just because it is a super flex spot does not mean you have to put a quarterback in. I think it's interesting. It would be interesting to know here if this is full PPR as well, because I think Michael Carter for me is a really, really interesting play this week. Because he could easily get 7-8 catches. And at that point, will get all of the work on the ground. And at that point, you are probably looking at a floor of like 12 to 15 points. Do we think that Russell Wilson is going to get to... He should get to 12 to 15 points, but will he... Michael Carter is the one that I'm kind of really probably most interested in there if it is full PPR.
I think with the games with Mike White last year, Carter was prominently featured as the receiving back, and he was utilized in that offensive scheme. It's going to be. I actually don't hate that, but it's tough to drop that quarterback. At the same time, Rachaad White, messy game, like you said, Nate. I'm going to say also don't use Russell Wilson this week. Let's go for upside plays. If I had to say, I trust the offense with the Buccaneers versus the offense with the Jets. So I'm going to side with Nate here on this one and go with Shad White. But I definitely understand and can totally see myself getting behind Michael Carter if Rashad White was not an option.
So I was just having a look on the fantasy data. Just over the last 5 weeks, he's only hit over 15 points once in FanDuel scoring, and that was 15.2. So he's seeing an average of around 12 points. So if this is a full PPR league, I think you hit that with both White and Carter. And I just, as you guys said, I just struggle to see the upside with Russell Wilson in this game. Did you see that crazy? There was a crazy stat doing the rounds on social media that if the Broncos had scored, it was something like 18 points on offense every game, they would have won 7 or 8 games this season. Defensively, they've been unbelievable, but they just cannot put up points.
I mean, you want to talk about a botch job of, I don't know if it's player evaluation, is just it.
It's a coach evaluation.
It's a combination to me.
I'll tell you what. I'll tell you what. When watching the Raiders game last week with the Broncos, the very first quarter, I was, there's no other game on at the time, so I'm watching it, and they took the play calling duties away from Nathaniel Hackett. I forget which person is actually calling it. It doesn't matter. Whoever that person is needs to keep calling the plays because they looked like a competent offense. Hand the ball off to your running back. Hand the ball off to your running back. Hand the ball off to your running back. Okay, play action pass. Okay, move the ball down the field. Get into the end zone. I'm like, wow, simple, basic, but guess what? It's working.
Mm-hmm.
And this is something that we were not seeing at all with Denver the previous weeks. They're trying to get too cute or trying to make things open up that just weren't there. They were actually imposing their will on this offense. So I thought that was interesting to see. Just a little nugget there. So thank you, Tootsie Pop 6 on the YouTube. Got Ryan here, Ryan H. Hi to you back. Thoughts on the weather games? Not worried about the wind for the Seattle game, Storms or Jags games. The Cleveland game looks tough. Lead Lamar to go off. It looks like he may not pass much today. Okay. Let's see here. If I had to say, I go off. I love that terminology here. I guess I need.
Wouldn't him go? But him going off is
running the ball.
What's historically been that? Yeah, is not having weapons. Now, don't get me wrong. The lack of weapons when you take away everybody, and you're obviously the most important thing is to have Mark Andrews, despite if Isaiah Likely is not, isn't going to play, and
right.
There's a lack of weapons for sure, but his upside has always been attached to his legs. Lamar Jackson's another one that let's look at like on the season as a whole. God, I don't want to say underperforming because each week, there's those big volatile weeks, but he's that 16-point threshold that we've been talking about over the last 6-7 weeks, because week 2 and 3, 40 points, and then it's been 15, 17, 16, but I think Jacksonville might be an opportunity, at least against the run. I think they have speed at the linebacking group, between Lloyd and Luakon. I just think that he might have a chance to eclipse the 100 yards rushing this week against him.
Well, there we go. So let's see here. We got another part. Is it heard that Lamar is dealing with a hip injury? Yeah, I feel like, at this point, everybody's dealing with something.
Exactly.
So I don't know if I would read too much into that. It's not to the point where you're hearing about him being questionable or he's not going to play or any talk like that. As far as everybody's concerned, he is going to play. And Nate, you brought it up great. The lack of potential options here for offense lends itself to this being a let's lean on Lamar game. So
he's off the injury report, and he never got anything short of his limited practice was the worst he had throughout the week. So I'm not concerned with it.
Very honest. All right. So thanks, Ryan. Appreciate the question. Let's head. So let's go back to the Tampa Bay Cleveland game. Looking up fantasy points allowed here. The Bucs are pretty good against the run here. So Nick Chubb. Obviously you're starting Nick Chubb, but you probably should temper your expectations there. I definitely don't see both running backs having success. And honestly, you haven't seen both running backs have success this entire season, which is a damn shame. Because everybody was drafting, especially the zero RBers were drafting Kareem Hunt later in rounds of their drafts back in August, and it just hasn't worked out. We got another question here on YouTube. Got Jacob here. Boyd or Christian Watson in PPR? Man, I like Tyler Boyd this week. I think the secondary for the Titans is just god awful. On the flip side, Philadelphia, I think Philadelphia is going to utterly massacre Green Bay today. Sorry, Jonathan.
No, that's quite right. I agree.
It is going to be – that game is going to end with a lot more question marks for people like, is Aaron Rodgers even going to come back next year? What has been going wrong with Aaron Rodgers? What's wrong with everything?
His thumb. He's got a broken
thumb. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So give me Tyler Boyd this week. I love his wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 upside. You guys have a opinion on this one?
I completely agree. With the Cincinnati game, there's a huge discrepancy between how the Titans are against the run and against the pass. I think I noted it down. There's something like they're first in defensive rush DVOA, and they allow the 4th fewest points to running backs, and they allow the 3rd most points to wide receivers. Beyond that, Mixon is out, so there is no way that Cincinnati is going to try and establish the run with Samaje Perine or whoever else they've got. They are going to be going through the air. Jamar Chase is then also out, so especially if it's full PPR, you've got a really safe floor with Boyd. And I think they're just going to go through the air. And with Christian Watson, he's been fantastic the last few weeks, but it is pretty much because of touchdowns. I mean, he's like the Green Bay version of Gabe Davis. He's just like ridiculously efficient. And so there is a much lower floor there for me.
Nice. So thanks for the question, Jacob. Hopefully that calmed you down a little bit in terms of who to start. Sticking with Tampa Bay, Cleveland, we're getting one step closer to Deshaun Watson coming back this week. Jacoby Brissett, I believe this is his last week of being a starter. Look, I love Amari Cooper. I'm not going to fade Amari Cooper. You're playing Amari Cooper. You're playing Nick Chubb, David Njoku at tight end. On the flip side, unless I'm missing Donovan Peoples-Jones, that's a name that's been floated around. I want to say for the past 8 weeks now, he's had at least 70 yards receiving, just missing that touchdown here and there for more fantasy upside consistency.
He's been really consistent. He's been very good. Great flex to have. It's been kind of double-digit points for the last few weeks.
See, perfect. Love it as a flex spot right there. On the flip side for Tampa Bay, no Leonard Fournette. Rashad White looks to get the start here, although Giovanni Bernard was activated here. Whether he's utilized in this offense, I don't know. Brady likes his vets. I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there to cause more confusion and mass chaos amongst all you all who have to deal with this question of who to start. But it should be Rashad White. And honestly, Chris Godwin has just been returning to form since coming back from his ACL. He's one who I think has not been getting enough attention in fantasy circles just because it's been a lackluster year for Tampa Bay. But you're starting him. You're starting Mike Evans. Anybody else I'm missing here besides these three? Brady, if you have him. Although temper your expectations there, right?
You've pretty much hit everybody. There's not many questions. I mean, the question marks obviously come in the form of, like you said, on the Cleveland side, just DPJ have that same, target share, that 20% that we've been seeing lately. I think you have the answers there. And the Rashad White question, it's fair to look at, does Brady like the vets? But that I don't know. I think he knows what he has in Rachaad White from what he saw in Week 10. I think hard to evaluate an entire season's worth of data in one game or an entire player profile. See how I did that player profile? You're getting really good.
That was good. I love it.
But yeah, I mean, I was going to say you're right, because the Bucs have really been struggling to run the ball, but they've got by far the fewest rushing yards, lowest yards per attempt. I remember in the offseason there were loads of O-line injuries, and you've kind of seen it with the lackluster run game. So yeah, I think I mean, White is also a really interesting option because of his pass catching upside as well, and obviously it's a great matchup with how susceptible the Browns are to the run.
Yeah.
Got a comment here from Shevin from the Dynasty Rewind. What's going on, Shevin? Hope you're having a great morning. Gator J, good morning to you. Hope you had a great Thanksgiving. Thanks a lot. Hope you did too. Let's get to some questions here. Got Johnny T80. Good morning, Johnny. Pick one for PPR. Watson, Deontay Johnson, Sutton.
Man, that's a microcosm of my season. Is just in a nutshell. You want to go with Deontay Johnson because yeah, thank you. Terrible. Damn, threw my damn focus up. I'm just kidding. I never have focus anymore. Just you want to start. You want to go. You want to play Deontay Johnson simply because each week's from really up until week 8, it was anywhere between 9 and 12 targets. Now he didn't exceed 65 yards, but like once in that time, and so you just been this huge letdown because there's no touchdowns, and you just you keep wanting to think this has got to be the week, right? Wrong, probably not. So mine comes down to Christian Watson, upside play of the multiple touchdown efficiency metric, and just I don't want to call it luck, but I mean with efficiency comes a little bit of boom or bust, I would say to that extent, or Cortland Sutton, which we've all pushed away from Russ, but I think I would go with Sutton myself, but it doesn't mean that I have to try to persuade you two fine gentlemen.
No, that's what I was going to say as well. That I think with Judy out as well, I think he'll see consistent targets. Deontay has a really tough matchup. He was one of my potential sits on the starts and sits article this week, just because I just don't like that matchup for him. So I think I'd go Sutton there, even though I'm not necessarily that excited.
If you haven't, folks, already, head over to fantasyandframes.com, read our start and sits article, and Jonathan did a great job. He'll be taking that going forward, as well as our IDP articles. Just great stuff here. I'm with you guys. I like Sutton. Week 10, 11 targets. Weeks 11, 7 targets, 9.6 half PPR, 10.5 PPR. The Panthers are pretty, middle of the road when it comes to friendliness and allowing fantasy points to the receiver position. The Indianapolis Colts, on the other hand, are the worst. They are the best, I guess, depends on how you look at it. They're really tough to get fantasy points against. So that secondary is actually pretty, interesting there. Go ahead, Sutton, with that one, Johnny. We've got another question here from, a lot of words in your username, but I'm just going to go Marco. Marco, welcome to the show. Russell Wilson, Trevor Lawrence, or Derek Carr with Fields out.
Yeah. The sigh.
Yeah. Give me Derek Carr this week. I just weather with Trevor Lawrence uncertainty, with Russell Wilson, Derek Carr. This on paper should be a fun game, actually. Yeah. This with Carr and Adams and whatnot.
Yeah, you're really selling this game to people.
Yeah, I know, really, right? It's really a good one.
That should be a promo.
But yeah, no, I agree. I listed him as a potential streaming option, a potential start in starts and sits, because I think I think it's going to be quite it's going to be one of those games where it probably doesn't mean anything at the end, once we get to February. But I think it's just going to be a really fun game. I think, I'm quite looking forward to that one.
Yeah, a question from the Dawn 6. Good morning. Pick a PPR flex: Sutton, Rashad White, Marquise Brown, or Christian Watson. Thanks, fellas. We just went back to the target volume we just went over the target volume headed Cortland Sutton's way. Rashad White going against a very vulnerable Browns team here against the run. Got Hollywood Brown making his season, or not season debut, but his return from injury, paired up against why am I forgetting his name? DeAndre Hopkins.
Mm-hmm.
Or Christian Watson, Mr. Touchdown or Bust, aka Gabe Davis 2.0 this year, as Jonathan mentioned earlier. I am going to stick with Sutton, actually. I like the target volume here for PPR. I think the receptions are just going to add up for you in terms of points. Anybody else have a differing opinion?
Personally, I would probably go White, just because of that matchup. I mean, Marquise Brown is a really interesting one, but the way that I normally play these kind of things is I would very, very rarely, unless I need to, play a player that's coming back from injury their first week. Normally, I'd like to leave it 1 week, see how they are, just because you don't know if they're going to, get injured within the first sort of couple of snaps, and then you end up with nothing. So I think if you've got an option like Rashad White or Sutton, then yeah, I would prefer to go with that. Wait to see how Brown is doing, and then make that decision next week. But yeah, personally for me, I would probably go White.
And between the two, my projected points that I am kind of seeing, that I lean Rashad White a little bit, but I think that it's splitting hairs. If you lean Sutton, I wouldn't be opposed to that move. I think they're both going to finish very close in points. So at that perspective spot now, it's more or less the total points on the week, more so than even the name. And I have Sutton and White very close in total points in a PPR. So feel comfortable with either of those two, I think, over Hollywood and Watson.
All right, there we go. Thanks for the question, Don. I got Famed Tiger. Wow, this is
right.
Yeah, calm down. It's going to be okay. We're going to get through this. We're going to get through this.
Right.
Name me the movie reference that's from, and I'll send you a T-shirt or something.
That's really nice.
Help me. I'm going to lose. Well, that's not a good mantra to have. Pick 2 wide receivers and 1 flex. His wide receivers are Hopkins, McLaurin. They're just stop right there. Nope, never mind. McLaurin, Kirk, Evans, Cooper, Allen. Running backs are Connor, David Montgomery, Jeff Wilson, Michael Carter. Okay, so I'll go with. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, so that he also mentioned that Derrick Henry is my starting running back. Stevenson played Thursday.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so I say
start with 2 receivers.
I'm going to go McLaurin and Keenan Allen.
Interesting.
No Hopkins?
The Hollywood Brown thing is I don't know how the targets are going to split up here. I know that McLaurin has been getting force-fed targets from Taylor Heineke. I know Atlanta's secondary is super suspect when it comes to wide receivers. And you know what? Keenan Allen, he didn't blow the doors off last week, but we did see it was his first game back since week 1. What you did see, though, is his target. He was targeted. He was relied upon for the big plays, whether it was the deep yardage ball that helped get the Chargers into scoring position towards the end of the game. I don't know. I think Justin Herbert, just everything is starting to click here for this offense, getting Keenan Allen back. No Mike Williams this week. That just means more target volume going his way. And let's face it, these Chargers, they need to start winning. They should not have lost that game last week. They did, but they should not have. Blame the defense for that one. But yeah, I like what they're doing with McLaurin. McLaurin is just he's and yeah, is it a homer pick for me? Sure, fine, I don't care. It is. He's also playing really well, and I think Keenan Allen, this could be a big game for him. And in terms of a flex, Jonathan, you had it best in your start and sit article. Give me Jeff Wilson Jr. This is going to be a fun matchup here for this running back. So it's McLaurin, Allen, and Wilson Jr. for me. Nate, who do you got?
So I'm going to say that I'm not going to lean the running back with any of those backs as my flex. I would rather just go with the receiver if that's the way it's broken down. I mean, it sounds like his running doesn't have a running back question as much as it's I'm looking at 3 receivers, and you've tipped me a little bit because I did watch that game, obviously against the Chargers, and Keenan Allen was everywhere. It was, you could see that he was read number 1 or 2 in about 90% of the passing plays. He looked good for his first game back. And I know the Chiefs secondary is not the greatest, but he had a great game. So I would say I was going to go Hopkins and McLaurin, and then my flex. And I was leaning a little bit towards, any of them. Why is he freaking out? Fame Tiger, you shouldn't freak out over a team. You should be. And now, granted, I get it. Sometimes you have this good team, this good assembled roster, and luck doesn't go your way, and that makes me more frustrated. That's when I am actually, because like I look at a team where I have to start, Ben Skowronek, and I'm like, yeah, this team sucks. I deserve to lose, but I don't. It's the team that like this where I'm like, I don't deserve to lose. How the hell am I losing? So Keenan Allen for me. Terry McLaurin, DeAndre Hopkins, and let's get you that win, Tiger. Jonathan?
For me, I would probably go Hopkins, McLaurin. McLaurin has an unbelievable matchup this week, and then probably Jeff Wilson Jr. again, just because with Mostert out against that Houston defense, I think he's going to run wild on them. So that would probably be my 3. But if you're going to argue Evans or Keenan Allen, I wouldn't be able to disagree with you too much.
And I'm not going to argue too much over the Jeff Wilson situation. Just again, it's hard. As when Colby was on, Colby Conway, about a month ago or whatever it's been now, months turn into weeks, turn into years. It feels like in fantasy football calendar speak. He said death taxes and running backs against Houston Texans, and that is a fair adage that is held true and held water every week. Yeah,
they're 31st in rush DVOA. I think they've given up the most points to running backs this season. So, yeah, I think it's a great matchup on paper.
So hopefully that gave you some insight to help better make that decision here for you, Fame Tiger. Relax, you're going to do fine. Just have positive thoughts here. All right, Nate, let's wrap up this game real quickly. We've been on this one for too long. IDP, let's start. Let's start with Cleveland. Taki, he's been playing pretty well. Everybody thought it would be the Deion Jones show, but so far it's been Taki. He's been playing pretty well. Who else we got here for Cleveland?
Yeah, it's honestly, I tell you, I mean, it's Myles Garrett. Right. It's Taki. Last week, JOK had that rebound game that everybody was expecting, right? No, everybody's kind of written off just in terms of production from the linebacker position in Cleveland. It's confusing. John Johnson III had a good week, but again, not someone that I'm necessarily going to actively start. Short of that, I don't think I like the everybody likes David Clowney for the college tape that we saw, but the matchup against Tristan Wirfs is less than ideal. On the Tampa Bay side, nobody really stands out outside of the norm. I think Mike Edwards might be up a little bit more in the box this week against a team that's needing to run, but probably won't be able to get much going. Like you said, Vita Vea and the rest of that defensive line is pretty stout. So the regular cast of characters, Devin White, Levante David, you could give a look at Joe Tryon Shrinka if you think that Tampa gets up and they're going to start rushing the quarterback, but that offensive line is not too porous and too weak in Cleveland. That's about all I got IDP wise.
All right, cool. Let's go to the next game here. Got Cincinnati and Tennessee. Oh, we got another question from Fame Tiger. Thank you. You're welcome. I'm worried about my best players being on the bench. Also, Lamar is becoming unreliable. Derek Carr better this week. We mentioned earlier, Derek Carr does have a really good matchup this week, which should be an entertaining game. And the weapons are limited here for Baltimore. I would hate to miss up on the rushing upside of Lamar Jackson in this week, however. So I would roll still with Lamar based off of that.
And also just a quick point on that first bit of the comment. Play some best ball. You'll means that you don't have to worry about these questions.
In fact, if you haven't already signed up for Underdog Fantasy, do so using the promo code Frames, and you'll get a 100% match up to $100 on your first deposit. So just food for thought. Just throwing that out there. Let's go to now Cincinnati and Tennessee. We mentioned the secondary woes for the Titans. Let's stick with defense first, then we'll go to offense. Cornerback Roger McCreary is a name I kind of want to throw out there as somebody who could get picked on a lot today. If you're looking for those passes defense points, Fame Tiger says, "Thank you, subscribe." Thank you very much. That's somebody I would pay attention to. Kevin Byard also has been coming on strong in recent weeks. Last year he finished as the number 1 graded safety in all of Pro Football Focus. So no surprise that he's translating onto the field now. No Danico Autry this week, which is, this could have been a great matchup for him going against the other side of Jonah Hill for the Bengals, even though Jonah Hill hasn't really been – not Jonah Hill. Who am I trying to say? That's not that's the guy from Superbad.
That's true. Would have been a much –
I'd love to see him play, to be fair.
Jonah something.
Jonah Williams.
Thank you, Jonah. Jonah. What the hell? Okay. No Jamar Chase. T. Higgins should have another big game. Les, who is live at FedEx, he'll be coming on in a little bit to talk probably about T. Higgins, even though we'll already talk about T. Higgins. It'll be fine. Tyler Boyd, really like him as a wide receiver too in PPR leagues this week. No Joe Mixon. I'm not on board with Samaje Perine. I've been here in Washington. I was there when they drafted him. You know what? He fumbles a lot. I'm glad he had a great game last week. I don't see this happening again this week.
No, you're trying to. I mean, the hope there is that he's going to get the receiving work. I mean, that's kind of what he's kind of been doing so far this year. But I mean, on the ground, it's really not a good matchup. We mentioned it before that the Bengals will look to pass, and I wouldn't be surprised if he only had sort of like 10 touches on the ground for like 30 yards or something like that, and then maybe 2 or 3 catches, and then burrow through like 30, 40 times. I think that's probably more likely to me. So I mean, if you're looking at, I'd much prefer someone like Jeff Wilson, Rashad White that we mentioned before. I think they've got much higher upside.
Nate, there's a name that you mentioned on Twitter, I want to say yesterday or the day before, of a player, Mr. Captain America, who could potentially cut into Samaje Perine's time here. Do you remember who that was?
Yeah, it's Chris Evans. Yeah, don't get me wrong. I'm not sitting here.
And he's not talking about the actor this time. It's not like a Jonah Hill.
No, this is not a Jonah Hill, Chris Evans comparison. Sorry, Jorge. Yep. But, the one thing about Evans is that I think that dual capability back more so than, I don't know, he's a little bit, just to me, he's more explosive than Samaje Perine. He coming back from not playing, what's he had? I mean, he has played no snaps really. So it's not like we have anything to gauge anything off of other than just how bad we know Samaje Perine has been. I don't want to start anybody against Tennessee. I mean, let's be clear about that. If there's a situation whatsoever, and unfortunately, Fame Tiger, if you're still listening, I have a league where I have to consider starting someone like Chris Evans, where it's like, well, because it's multi-flex, 14-team league, and you just need the upside for the touchdown, and you hope maybe he comes in and he is the receiving back and gets some work. But I want to avoid Tennessee's defense. Even though Danico Autry being out is big, that's partially why they're so successful against the run, Jorge, Jonathan. big bodies,
Yeah.
rotation up front. Jeffrey Simmons, Denico Autry,
Yeah.
they can rotate and move in and around that defensive line and get good matchups or miss matchups and put constant pressure behind the line of scrimmage. And maybe without Denico Autry, they get a little bit more play, but I still don't want to. I don't want to play around with that defense.
No, I think I'm playing him in maybe one or two. I think the staff, our staff league is one place where I'm having to play him, but simply because I've got Joe Mixon, I've got James Conner, and then I think my other running back is Tyler Algier, and I think I had Melvin Gordon as well. I don't have a lot of running back depth, and so it's kind of I kind of need to play him because there's no one else.
Yeah.
Fortunately, I have some half decent wide receivers, and I listen to you guys for my very good IDP players. So yeah.
Smart move, yeah, exactly. Going to now the Tennessee side of the ball. We saw Treylon Burks kind of have a coming out party last week versus Green Bay. Ryan Tannehill back under this Titans team, and I'm going to do it again, Nate. Last week on the pregame show, I was like, the Titans are doing something. No, it was 4th and French. The Titans are doing something good. I don't remember the stat or metric or what exactly it was that they were quoted for doing something good. But they're doing something good again. Something good that helped them become the number 1 seed in the AFC last season. Not that I'm saying that's going to happen this year, but they're doing something good again. They're looking very competent on offense. We saw Austin Hooper get in the end zone a couple times. We saw Treylon Burks get over 100 yards receiving on, I want to say, 10 or 11 targets. We saw Derrick Henry get his They're going back to their roots, and it's working. Mm-hmm. And I could definitely see Tannehill having a good game. I could see Burks, Henry, tight end is so shallow, right? It's kind of hard not to say sit anyone who's been playing well. So Austin Hooper. If you had to say any one of those offensive players for the Titans that just rattled off, which one gives you the most pause?
I mean, probably Hooper, just because tight end is a wasteland, and maybe Tannehill as well, just because I think there are probably better streaming options out there. But yeah, I mean, like beyond fantasy, I mean, Tennessee are just well coached. They're just a really solid team. I mean, you saw it against Green Bay last week. Who, if you look at the Green Bay team, they are really, really talented based on the players that they've taken in the first round and the free agents and whatever. But Tennessee is just they're just well coached. They destroy them because they know what they're doing and they're well coached. And yeah, they'll win the AFC South. They might win one playoff game. They won't win the Super Bowl. But yeah, I mean, Burks, back to fantasy. I mean, Burks is a really interesting one for the end of the season as well. If you can stash him on the end of your on the end of your bench, it's classic that these rookie wide receivers start slow and then ramp up towards the end of the season. We're seeing that with the likes of Burks and Watson. So it's something to bear in mind for future years. Don't jump off the bandwagon too early with these guys.
I got a question here from Kevin Valentine over on YouTube. Good morning, Kevin. How should I feel about the Cleveland weather? Not great. Not great, Kevin. But this should still be a good game for Rachaad White if you have him on your team. I'm not fade. I think we've all gone around and said we're not really fading any of these players here for Tampa Bay so much. So let's fire them up. If you have a specific question about a particular player, just drop it in the chat and we'll answer. Here we go. He says, I have Brady and Rachaad White going against Godwin. Like Brady, startable. Rachaad White has a great matchup. Godwin's good. I'm not going to say you're not going to get, he's not going to hurt you, but I think you have two good options there, though, for you in this game. Let's go back to Ryan here on YouTube. He says, pick two, please, in standard. Keenan Allen, Christian Watson, Christian Kirk, DK Metcalf, Ayuk, or Josh Palmer. Last week, he put in Keenan and Palmer. They went off. He benched Watson and played Kadarius Toney. Hey, you know what? You and me both, brother. Okay, so
yeah, I did
and you know what? Stuff happens. What are you going to do? Standard league. So when I think standard league, I think deep, long passes, big yardage, touchdowns. So immediately, the players that jumped out to me when I saw this were Watson and Metcalf. But I could definitely see that there's a case made for Ayuk and even Palmer. I guess my pairing would go first Watson, Metcalf, and then Ayuk, Palmer. Nate, who would you start here?
Man, you know what's crazy is the name that we're kind of all tiptoeing and dancing around is Christian Kirk. Yet if you look at about every, if you look at the wide receivers in the NFL as a whole, he's fourth in red zone targets. He's first in red zone receptions. He's first in red zone touchdowns. He's first in red zone yards. I think I got to go Christian Kirk. I know matchup wise, we can kind of pivot and look at some better matchups as a whole, but when they get into within the 20, it sure looks like they want to lean on Christian Kirk right there. And I think that in a standard league, that's how you're going to win, the touchdown volumes. And like you said, the big plays. So I never thought I would be leaning Christian Kirk in this situation, considering the group of names, but I think I'll go Kirk and Metcalf.
Yeah, I really like Kirk this week. Again, he was someone that I wrote about as a start this week, because actually the Baltimore matchup isn't as bad as you would think. They're allowing the 7th most points to wide receivers. I would feel a lot better about this if it was full PPR, just because I think he's seen something like an average of around 10 targets over the last 4 weeks, 10 targets per game. The three for me are Kirk, Metcalf, and probably Keenan Allen as well, just because I think the yardage will be there. I'm not. I'm struggling to narrow it down from there.
Yeah, I think we got a couple options here that Ryan can feel more confident about. So good luck with that. Again, if you have more questions, drop them in the chat. We'll answer them. Back to Kevin. Real life football. Who would you rather have, T. Higgins or CeeDee Lamb? For me, it's CeeDee Lamb. Just primary weapon on that offense. I don't care if they get Odell Beckham; he's still going to be the primary weapon on that offense.
Also, I saw that in the comments to the side, and I saw real football, and I thought he was going to ask a soccer question, and then I saw that.
Oh, look, you tied, buddy. All right, you didn't beat us. You tied. All right, easy there. IDP we didn't go over for the Bengals.
Yeah, we did. No, we didn't. No, we didn't. You're right. I'm a liar. Okay, we did not. I will say that I do like. Last week we were on it's Trey Hendrickson's week to put all the stats behind us and look at the underlying metrics and see what happens, and he exploded. And I think this week is going to be another really good matchup for him and Sam Hubbard both. Mm-hmm. The offensive line, despite being well coached, like Jonathan said, unfortunately is a little void of talent, and talent will reign supreme, at least across the offense and defensive line. Logan Wilson, I like the play this week just simply because I do see Tennessee is just to pound it down your throat. And Logan Wilson is going to be the recipient of a lot of Derrick Henry shoulders and knees and toes and other body parts, I'm sure. But I think that does lead to a good positive floor for Wilson. Maybe Jermaine Pratt as well. I mean, if there's a situation that you have super deep linebacker options, it's worth considering. And then, of course, for me, that this is a Von Bell play just as much as it's anybody else. Jesse Bates is always in play, but between the two, those two always seem to be kind of close to each other. When you do the rankings, it's always like, hey, Von Bell, Jesse Bates, somewhere close. I think this is pretty far separated now, where I have Bell as one of my top tier defensive backs, and Bates is in that. I think what do I have him at 16, 17, somewhere around there. I think still a good play, just not on the Von Bell level for me, at least. On the other side of the ball, Jorge, let's talk a little bit about Tennessee. We did Tennessee. We did. We talked about no Danico Autry. Bud Dupree has a good matchup against Jonah Hill. So that should be just an absolute bloodbath, right?
Jonah Williams.
I know.
Yeah.
Good.
Sorry, I didn't pick up on your sarcasm there. My bad. Okay. My bad. God. Gator J chiming in here. England versus US as a tie is a big L for England. So
was an L. Yeah, I mean, if you'd like to leave the recording going when we finish, I'm happy to go on a rant about how bad this team is and the stupid decisions that were made. But yeah.
Sure, why not? Let's go here to Houston and Miami. Look, we talked about the susceptibility of the Texans when it comes to stopping the running game. Jeff Wilson, a great play this week. Obviously, you're starting Tua, you're starting Waddle, you're starting Hill. I think you can start Gesicki against this Houston team also. I mean, obviously, he's been playing pretty well for a tight end. Houston on the other side, I believe they're going to Kyle Allen as the quarterback, no more Davis Mills. Kyle Allen has a propensity to be somebody who just closes his eyes and throws it downfield. So if you were ever looking for an opportunity for Brandon Cooks to have that one relevant game this year, this could be it. And that's scary. This could be it. Aside from that, Dameon Pierce, I'm not worried about what happened last week versus Washington, even though he got power bombed, Captain Insano style, by the Commanders last week. I think he bounces back this week against Miami.
Washington allows something like the fifth fewest points to running back. So yeah, it's a bad matchup. He should have a safe floor most weeks, given that there's no one else there to really take touches.
All right. Let's go to the other side of the ball here for both of these teams. Nate, Miami, they brought in Bradley Chubb, but has he really been doing anything from an IDP standpoint to kind of warrant saying, okay, I'll put him in my DL spot?
Yeah, no. The answer is no. And I didn't ever really – I feel like that rotation in Miami is it's dominant from a real football standpoint. Is exactly what you want. You want Jalen Phillips, you want Christian Wilkins, and Ingram and Chubb is nasty front four. This matchup here on the outside against Laramie Tunsil is going to be a tough one, but we're going to go straight back to the old honey hole here, which is Kenyon Green, Scott Quisenberry, left guard, center. Terrible as far as protecting whoever it is in the backfield there. Unfortunately, this week is going to be O'Kyle. And so I think that lines up because the way it's been playing, I mean, there's a chance from what I've seen, and I can't say I've watched every snap to know this, where if there's a Dolphins fan who's watching and can tell me otherwise, I see a lot of stunts. I see a lot of rotation movement across that defensive line. Christian Wilkins, despite playing more on the left side, could slide over occasionally and take advantage of that matchup, especially if they want to isolate and take Dameon Pierce out of this game. And that's going to be the calling card of the defense is if you can eliminate Pierce, I don't think they're worried about Houston anyway. I don't think they're, really biting on their teeth, famed Tiger style, freaking out. So I think they're going to just, control the whole game. But any one of those defensive linemen, Jalen Phillips could have a big game because he's lined up, when he's matched up with those two. Christian Wilkins, I'm moving a lot of those guys up, and I'm actually moving the linebackers. I can't move them much further down. Jerome Baker is already on my do not start list for every week.
Yep.
Gross.
Yep. Sounds like we got the bases covered there. Let's go to our next matchup here. We got Chicago and the Jets.
Trevor Siemian against Mike White. Who would have thought?
This could be an Elijah Moore game. I'm just putting it out there. He could have a really good week this week because Zach Wilson's not the quarterback.
Yeah. No, it's a great point. If he's on waivers, you've got a spare bench spot. Just throw him in there. If he doesn't do anything, you can throw him back onto waivers next week. But yeah, I mean, we saw how good he was last year. He's a really talented player. Zach Wilson has just not been finding him. So yeah, I'd certainly just throw him onto your bench for this week.
Nice. Let's go for the Jets. So James Robinson, let me pull up his stats here. Ever since coming over from Jacksonville, he had that one, I fell into the end zone game and I got you 10 points. Aside from that, let me look, like I said, as I'm looking at his stats, let's see how he's done since week 8. Insert music. Control F. Robinson. Here we go. Not Brian Robinson. Okay, somebody talk while I'm looking this up here.
Yeah. It's been you look at Jorge scrambling. He just wanting to find any positive information on James Robinson whatsoever, so his love child doesn't get just slaughtered in the barrage of he
Yeah.
can't even beat out Michael Carter, which Michael Carter is
Yeah.
very
1 point last
undersized.
week. All right. Good job.
It took you that long to find 1 point? Oh, you had to scroll down to like RB 120 probably.
Yes, I did. Yeah, it was
exactly.
pretty bad. Yeah. So 1 point last week on. Wow, that's enough about James Robinson. Michael Carter, yeah, definitely the guy here for the Jets. I'm sorry, carry on, Nate, as you were saying.
No, it's the Jets is exactly like Jonathan said. I think what's going to happen. You saw it was a lot of check downs. I think Michael Carter could be the recipient. PPR leagues could be, quasi dangerous against the Chicago defense. It's not really stingy. Pardon me for 1 second.
Yeah, they're allowing the fifth most points to running backs. So yeah, I mean he's going to see the vast majority of touches both on the ground and through the air. I think he's a great play this week.
Nice. On the flip side, it looks like no Justin Fields this week. Trevor Siemian, that's just for me an immediate downgrade for everybody. And David Montgomery is the only saving grace there. And if they make that team one-dimensional, how much of a saving grace is he really going to be?
But then the Jets aren't kind of this, this terrible defense that you can run all over like we've seen in sort of in years past. They're allowing the 10th fewest points to running back. So yeah, he's got a fairly safe floor, but the upside, especially because how likely are they to really get to the end, into the red zone, that much today. So yeah, I think fairly limited upside from Montgomery.
Yeah, I don't see upside for really hardly anybody. Like I said, Montgomery might be utilized the most, but upside is limited. The Jets do one thing extremely well too on defense is they are one of the fewer teams in the NFL that just don't blitz that much. They let their front four get all the pressure, and they can leave their linebackers back, and that takes away a lot of the middle of that field, prevents some of the big plays, prevents some of the big chunk plays that you would want to get with Montgomery. Because, like you said, I don't see a ton of red zone snaps. I don't see a ton of high value touches. I think it's a lot of in between the 20s. And I mean, is it safe to assume maybe a 15 for 65 game out of David Montgomery might be
without a touchdown, maybe one or two passes, and yeah. But how do you guys feel about like Darnell Mooney today? Because I'm just thinking about the staff league. I've got Darnell Mooney, and then I've got Paris Campbell on the bench. I've actually also I picked up Elijah Moore as well last night. So yeah, so I'm thinking of benching Darnell Mooney for Paris Campbell.
Well, you check if I'm playing you this week on the staff.
Yeah, I was just about to say. I think I'm playing Keith.
I might do that. It's what's sad to say is that Mooney, who might have the best
matchup the last couple of weeks as well.
Yeah, and being in the slot, he prevents the sauce treatment, so he doesn't have to worry about that, which is always a plus. It's Trevor Siemian again. Let's temper expectations as far as true upside, but as your wide receiver 3 flex to get 8 targets, there'll be quality touches at least as far as good high percentage throws. And so 6 receptions on 8-9 targets, 70 yards, something to that effect is definitely doable from a flex standpoint.
Yeah.
Gator J's asking, what about Cole Kmet? I mean, at this point, how well he's been playing, can you afford not to start Kmet? And who else do you have on your waiver wire or bench? So that'd be my optimistic view here on Cole Kmet. I'm actually more excited, though, on the defensive side of the ball here. We got Jack Sanborn. I'm actually really excited about Nicholas Morrow this week. I know he hasn't been lighting it up in terms of total tackle numbers. But what he has been doing is getting you a lot of TFLs or tackles for a loss the past few weeks. So he has been very disruptive in that backfield. And I'm not really scared of the Jets offensive line really finding a way to stop that. So I definitely think he's definitely a good splash play this week. for the linebacking position. No Jaquan Brisker out this week. I want to say I'm missing somebody else on Chicago, but I can't think of anybody off the top of my head. Sanborn, other linebacker there.
You're not. I mean, Eddie Jackson has had a great season. Eddie Jackson most likely will be just in that free safety role. Without Brisker, DeAndre Houston Carson will step in and play the majority of those snaps, which 2 years ago, there were weeks that, Houston Carson was viable, and he was actually IDP start worthy in some. It was deeper leagues, of course, but I just don't like much more outside of the Sanborn and Nicholas Morrow plays for Chicago. For the Jets, if you think, Chicago needs to move the ball to make a lot of these plays a little more valuable, because the limited snaps reduces the pure upside play. But I like CJ Mosley, of course, as always. Very rarely you're going to start a corner, but this could be a week that Simeon, if someone's going to make a mistake and try to sling it around, it might be that, and he might have to attack Sauce Gardner occasionally. I'd still probably avoid that. The big play that we're looking for is realistically who across that defensive line is going to put pressure, because like I said, they don't really blitz that much, so it's going to be who can create the most. Quinnen Williams will be my number one option across that line, even over Carl Lawson, but not much. Jordan Whitehead, maybe he might be in the box enough, and again, a run heavy team, you could see a little bit elevated floor for Jordan Whitehead. Outside of that, there's not much else. What up?
What about Quincy? But the other Williams brother here, Quincy Williams.
Yeah.
Has he not been playing as consistently as he has been in previous seasons?
Just returning from from PFF standards, no, he's been terrible. But he has returned. He's been valuable, but I don't know if he's fully healthy yet. And that's something I want to pay attention to, because coming off of injury, if I'm not mistaken, I don't remember how many tackles he had last week. I don't have it in front of me right now, but he had a good week, and he had a better production, a better showing than I had expected out of him personally.
All right, let's go to the next game here. And it's a shame that Keith is in the mountains this week on a little retreat, I'm assuming with the fam, because we would be talking more smack here as his Falcons are heading to FedEx to take on my Commanders. Taylor Heineke, after last week, was declared the starter full season, which means only good things for Terry McLaurin. Logan Thomas was banged up this week, but it looks like he's going to play. And last week, you were able to see that, hey, Logan Thomas can be a really good tight end. He can really get those passes, make those plays like he did a few seasons ago when he was finishing down the stretch as a top five tight end in fantasy. Aside from that, it's interesting. Brian Robinson is technically declared the starter, but we saw a lot more of Antonio Gibson last week than we did. It's almost like they're just riding the hot hand here in Washington. So that causes me to temper a little bit of expectations here. Until there's more clarity, I'm not going to be too excited here for this running game from a fantasy perspective. On the flip side, for Atlanta, I think what really surprised me about this Commanders game versus the Eagles going back 2 weeks ago is the biggest issue the Commanders have is the deep ball. And we saw them almost not get away with it had they not forced that fumble down the stretch. So I definitely see Atlanta taking advantage of the secondary, which means I think Drake London, obviously no Kyle Pitts here. But outside of that, Cordero Patterson in the running game is going to be a tough start this week, because like we said earlier, Washington is really good against the run. Him and Tyler Algier should not have a super awesome game. That's kind of my thoughts here on offense, unless anybody else has a question on this one.
I'm sorry. This week's matchups, we were talking about it yesterday, and just breaking down, and the post-Thanksgiving snooze fest as far as games go is this weekend. I know that there's some important games. Well, that's crazy because the important games are realistically a 5-5 Chargers team against a 4-7 Arizona Cardinals team, and somehow a what the heck were they at? Yeah, the Commanders and Falcons, a 6-5 and 5-6 team that has huge importance in both standings as far as divisionally going. That
But will
it
have
took
absolutely no importance to the, come January, February.
exactly, and I mean it took Jorge, a Commanders fan, a while to be able to get excited about any of the actual plays outside of really Terry McLaurin. It's like, yeah, I mean,
I mean,
okay,
Gibson for me is kind of
right,
it's slightly more interesting just because he's getting targets. I think he's seen something like 3 targets in all but one game this year.
yeah.
But yeah, he's got a fairly solid floor. But yeah, you're right.
Ken Sonnenberg here. Does Deshaun Dotson have any value? I'm sure to somebody, but not for fantasy probably this week.
Dynasty, yeah, but I mean,
He's not consistent enough where I could be like, oh yeah, throw in Jahan Dotson into your flex here. On the flip side here, though, I do like for defense. Let's stick with Atlanta and work back to Washington. I like Arnold Ebiketie this week. The past couple of weeks, he's been averaging 11.3 points. He's gotten you a couple sacks. He's really coming on a little bit stronger. The rookie here, when getting more playing opportunity, I think going against Cornelius Lucas for the Commanders, who's been what we like to call in the biz not good.
Yep.
So definitely liking that. People were talking about, oh, well, is it Troy Anderson? Is it Michael Walker, Anderson Walker? Who's going to be the guy? We saw Anderson creep up into snaps played last week. I actually personally, I like Rashaan Evans. I know he's not like the sexiest name here in this linebacking core, but you know what he has been? Super consistent. So him and or Walker, Richie Grant. A couple weeks ago, I was really high on Richie Grant, and then he totally cratered. Not sure how I feel about this matchup here. What are your thoughts here with Richie Grant here, Nate?
I think Rich Grant was a product of the scoring system in last week's game because he was around the ball a lot and he was involved. Like if you look at certain, like if you take PFF's scoring and you look at their grades, they have him involved in 7 tackles, corresponding to contrary reports as far as what. Unfortunately, what happens is it's what we use for our scoring. So it doesn't matter what PFF says, but I think it's a better underlying metric as far as how did the person really play? Were they as unproductive as what it seems on paper, or is there something more to that game? And that's what I saw at least out of Grant. And he's playing predominantly box snaps now again. We've said it since week 1. It's been the same thing. He has a position. He takes advantage of it, and he just I like to see the solo tackles go up, but each week it's been trending for me at least in the right direction. Week 9 was 11 tackles. The solo to assist is bad, I get it, but that maybe he'll be able to improve upon that. 8 tackles, and then the 6th, the 1-5 solo to assist. I would like to see a little bit more, some of the splash plays. We're not seeing behind the line of scrimmage, but I like Richie Grant as a player, and I think the matchup could, be just solid enough, especially if, depending upon, you think Washington is going to try to control this game through the air, or you think they're going to try to actually just run over Atlanta?
I think they're going to run. All the beat reporters here have been very honest when it comes to look. Taylor Heineke is not here to blow the doors off the hinges here. He's here to manage the game and help them win and cut off the cost of turnovers. So yeah, I don't see them just airing it out for the sake of airing it out against Atlanta. Although when they do air it out, the last time Heineke was the quarterback with Terry McLaurin had like 6 catches for 130 yards and 2 touchdowns. So, I could definitely see that being the receiving thing there. But for Washington, look, this defensive line Jonathan Allen, defensive tackle Deron Payne, defensive end Montez Sweat. They all had great weeks last week. Out of those three, I feel like Jonathan Allen has been one of the more consistent ones, and he's a D tackle who, it's rare that you get a D tackle ranked so highly in IDP, unless you're one of the premier elite ones like an Aaron Donald or a DeForest Buckner. So Jonathan Allen, I like this week. Sweat definitely has the sack upside. No Chase Young this week, which I don't even want to get into that as a real football fan. On the flip side here, no, that's it. That's pretty much everything we had to cover in this game. Let's get to some questions here. We got Shauna McKinley, full PPR, Miles Sanders, or Latavius Murray.
Give me Sanders against that Packers run defense. I think. I think Murray's got a fairly safe floor with no Gordon, but Sanders. That I think he's got a much higher upside.
What about you, Nate?
Yeah, and I think like you said earlier, this Philadelphia game could get out of control pretty early, and they might just be able to lean more on Miles Sanders as the game progresses. I like both of the matchups. I have Sanders like one spot ahead of Latavius Murray overall, so I guess that means I'm leaning Sanders.
All right. Thanks for the question. We got Brian here. David Njoku or Evan Ingram, tight end PPR. I like Njoku, to be honest with you. I think Ingram has been he had his time. I don't think that's now. I think Njoku is one of the best tight ends in football. It's not necessarily translating in terms of like a massive fantasy output, but if I had to pick one or the other, it'd be Njoku. Shauna back with another question. Is it crazy that I'm considering playing Sam Darnold over Russell Wilson? No, it's not crazy. And that's how crazy this season has been. But would you do it? Nate, would you start Sam Darnold over Russell Wilson in your Superflex spot?
No, I couldn't. I can't. I want to. I think it'd be a zany, fun thing to do. But I'm not here for zany as much as I am. Not in this particular. Any other name almost, but Sam Darnold, and I might be like leaning. Like if you, in all fairness, and I mean this sincerely, if it was Bryce Perkins over Russell Wilson, something like that would be like, no, not Bryce. Maybe Bryce Perkins. No, maybe Bryce Perkins. No, unfortunately, you can't. I think that you still hope that maybe Denver's trending in the right direction from a coaching stylistic approach, and maybe it's going to get better. But to our friend Queen Roxanne, who is the Denver Broncos fan, I'm sorry each week that she has to go through that. And I know that your Packers aren't exactly uplifting, but at least you kind of know what you're.
Yeah. Yes. And also we haven't mortgaged the future slightly in terms of contract.
Correct.
But there's going to be ways that you can trade people out and let people go and whatever. To me on this, I there's no way that I would play Sam Darnold just because of the defense that he's going up against. I mean, it's one of the best defenses in the league. So I think I wouldn't be surprised if they got 2, 3, even more picks. And you saw Baker Mayfield after, or whoever else is on that carousel of quarterbacks. Yeah.
Yep. So go Russell Wilson there, Shauna. All right. Speaking of this game, we can go quickly through this game. Denver, Carolina, fading everybody for the Carolina Panthers. Deonta Foreman, even fading him against this matchup here against the Broncos.
So I had a quick question on DJ Moore because I've got one league where I need to bench one of DJ Moore, Deontay Johnson, Christian Watson, and Donovan Peoples-Jones. And I feel like it shouldn't be like, obviously DJ Moore and Deontay Johnson they are better players, but I really do not like those matchups, and so I need to bench one of those four, and I'm struggling to put DJ Moore in that lineup given this matchup.
Yeah,
it's a full PPR, by the way.
I think the struggle with situations like this is to even 11 weeks into the season, sometimes it is still very hard to let go of name value that we were associating with productivity in the draft.
Mm.
Yeah, in our
Oh, yeah,
drafts.
this is a dynasty league as well. So I love DJ Moore in dynasty. I've got him in so many
Sure,
places, and he's just
sure,
killing
yeah.
me everywhere.
At this point, I'm looking for consistency. If I was there, so I would, out of the options you just listed, I would not. I would play DPJ over DJ Moore.
Yeah,
to be honest with you. On the flip side, for Denver, we talked about expect a very low floor for Russell Wilson, but definitely better than Sam Darnold's floor. Latavius Murray, we did see that the running game was a little bit emphasized more last week with Latavius Murray. Again, no Melvin Gordon out there, but still, it's tough. I mean, if you're playing Latavius Murray, you have no choice but to play Latavius Murray, I'm assuming, on your roster due to injury or I guess it's just injury this week. Cortland Sutton, the target volume, like I said, 7 and 11 the past couple weeks, should be there. Outside of that, I'm not really feeling too comfortable for any other offensive player here for Denver, unless one of you guys has one. Defense, on the defensive side of the ball, Josie Jewell. If you had to rank Josie Jewell and Alex Singleton 1-2, it'd be Jewell Singleton, right, Nate? Or would you go the other way?
Man, I don't know if I could. Because just when given full-time role, Singleton every time has given us a solid week, and it's been double-digit tackles in so many. If you look at the overall tackle per accurate, whatever the hell I'm thinking of, tackle efficiency, Alex Singleton is right at the top of that list, basically. Well, obviously with minimum snaps played, et cetera, how you can kind of isolate those players, but that's all he does. He gets on the field and he just, Pac-Man's tackles. Just takes them all. And it hurts because you don't think he's that great of a player, but again, bypass that. Just forget all that. I like Josie Jewell a lot, but I like Alex Singleton more, I think.
All right, there we go. On the flip side here, going back to here, for Carolina, Brian Burns. We saw Jeremy Chin play more in the box last week, so that's encouraging for a defensive back.
Mm-hmm.
Frankie Louvu at linebacker should also have a pretty big day, given the fact that the Broncos are going to be running the ball a lot. So those would be my three for Carolina. So let's head over to the last of the 1 o'clock games here. Oh, wait, we have a question here from Tone on YouTube. Kamara, Rashad White, Najee pick 2.
I want to see Kamara status for the day. I know that throughout the week it's been, limited here and there. But I saw the same thing about Mark Ingram too. And I was going to say, if Ingram's not healthy and Kamara is, then I don't have to worry about touches being taken away. And what has happened that we actually...
But it's also an awful matchup. It's
terrible matchup.
San Francisco, third in defensive rush DVOA. I think they're allowing something like the second fewest points to running backs. But I always struggle to bench someone like Kamara when you know that he could go off for... He could get you 30 points on you.
Exactly. Yeah, if you look at just the last couple weeks, I think teams from the running back, position know they can't run on San Francisco, and so it's more through the air. And over that time, they have seen the second most targets to the running back position. They haven't allowed a ton of receptions on that, only 10 out of the 18 targets, but if there's a situation that Kamara could see that elevated floor, that's going to be the situation. It's just that matchup sucks so bad. Whereas the Colts matchup is exactly what I'm saying, but elevated even times a little bit more so in that over the last month, Indy has actually given up or seen the second most targets to opposing running backs. And so here's something that can elevate both players' floors, because that's Rashad White's my one starter. The question then is coming down to Kamara or Najee, which is weird, isn't it? That
Yeah, I know.
Rashad White's my option one.
Right.
What do you guys think? Who are you picking if you had to choose?
I think I'm going White and Kamara.
Yeah. See, I'll be the contrarian. I'm going White and Najee. I just think
we really didn't help this guy, did we?
No, we did. We got you
Tone.
one. We got you one, Tone. So I'll go Najee just because I think the running back matchup is easier with Indianapolis versus Kamara going against San Francisco. So that'd be my rationale there. Okay, Baltimore, Jacksonville. Real quick here. Let's start with Jacksonville. ETN, I think, is a good start. Baltimore is susceptible to the running game. Christian Kirk, we talked about.
So the one thing that should be, brought up is Baltimore terrible for the first 9 weeks against opposing receivers. The last 4 weeks, though, they have actually improved. And I think that's just, an improving health across the secondary. Don't get me wrong. They're still not elite. They're middle of the pack. They're, per point basis, I think they're 15th. So, I mean, they still are susceptible to that. So Christian Kirk is still a good play. It's just they used to be the number one team. They were the team that I was targeting for wide receivers. And now I think that we're starting. What we've seen is this. We've seen with the improvements from Roquan Smith to allow that secondary to kind of stay back. They don't have to try to be as perfect, if that's the right way to say it. That's not the right way to say it, but you get the idea. And when they're playing in nickel and dime, Kyle Hamilton, rookie sensation, has stepped up amazingly as of late. He's the number one rated safety in the NFL per PFF grading. And then Geno Stone, who plays deep and has played a significant role, is right up there as well. So they have 3 of the top 10 rated secondary as far as PFF grading and ratings go. So that's been the improvement to that team, is they've really shored up that secondary.
Welcoming in David from Connectco. What's going on, Dave?
Not a lot. Sorry, I'm late, guys. Better late than never, though, right?
There you go.
Sure. No,
says me. The person who's late.
Says me, Dave. I would always rather have you up here, just in time to talk about who the hell are we talking about right now?
Baltimore, Jacksonville.
Perfect. Go right ahead.
Yeah. Who do you like outside of Lamar Jackson this week, Dave?
I like Devin Duvernay to bounce back. I think he's got a good opportunity to be that number one receiver again. You got Isaiah Likely out. I know Mark Andrews is back, but he's still not 100%. Lamar really needs someone to throw to. I think last week showed that he can't just run the ball nonstop. He's got to go back to his air game. It's what worked against Miami. Not that they won that game, but it's what really created that high power offense. Mm-hmm. Same guy who scored 3 touchdowns the first 2 weeks. So I'm excited about Devin Duvernay.
As DeMarcus Robinson as well, I think he's kind of been seeing targets, but it's difficult to know kind of which person is gonna pop off each week.
If it's the similar situation, so DeMarcus Robinson with the years with the Chiefs, you knew a game like last week was going to happen. You knew it. It was bound to happen. It happened every year. There was 1 or 2 of them, and immediately I would love to have that in front of me to see what the roster percentages jumped from that 1 week to the next, just for him to go back to mediocrity. Not even mediocrity. Obscurity is essentially the right way to say it, because he blew up. Would have 3 touchdowns. That 3 touchdowns is crazy, but you get the idea. He'd have 2, or he'd have a couple touchdowns, and then nothing.
All right. Let's quickly go over IDP for Baltimore. Roquan, Kyle Hamilton. Kyle Hamilton not there yet, or is he more just a football player?
The snaps just aren't there yet, I don't think.
Okay.
I want him to be there, but his usage across the field, not consistent in terms of everything. It's just strictly a matter of give it time. He'll come around. He'll get there.
We had so you're saying Geno maybe, or do you think Kyle Hamilton's eating into his snaps too much to make Geno Stone somebody that you could start this week?
Different roles. They're not playing the
Okay.
same role necessarily. So they're using they're really, when they're breaking off into nickel and dime formations is when Kyle Hamilton's on the field the most. And he's getting slot work. He's kind of the hover safety, if you want to call it that. I know they actually have a name for that. I don't know what it is, so I just make up my own, because that's what you're supposed to do. You make it up, and then if enough people hear this and then they start calling it that,
yep. They Chelsea friends.
Just say it with enough confidence.
Chelsea friends.
Say it with enough confidence.
Exactly. Yep. Say it with enough confidence, and that better late than never. Yes.
Love it.
And then, dude, we can't discredit what Justin Houston has done on the season. Right. Justin Houston's older than me, and not really, but he's been great. I mean, from every metric that defines what an edge rusher is supposed to look like, he's near the top. I don't know if I love the matchup as much. I don't hate the matchup. Jacksonville's offensive line's not great, but maybe a little. Just shout out Justin Houston in case you're listening.
All right. What about for Jacksonville?
I mean, I don't know if I've been disappointed in Trayvon Walker more so than Josh Allen. Both haven't exactly been lighting the world on fire, if you want to. Devin Lloyd's been a serious letdown for me over the last couple weeks, really the last 5 or 6 weeks. Luakon, you're going to start. You're going to get that solid tackle floor there. And then our guy, Rayshon Jenkins, could see another week like he did last week, where he's playing box snaps. We're getting what we wanted out of him. And, a little sketchy sometimes here and there, can kind of hit and miss. But I think that we just, rely a little too much on the box snaps, but it leads to bigger plays.
Yep. You got to be in the right spots with plus Booger McFarland quote right there. Okay, let's go to the first of the 4 o'clock games. Got the Chargers, got the Cardinals. Let's start with the Chargers. We talked a little bit about Keenan Allen and how he was used pretty well last week. Didn't have the blow-up game for his first game back, but he was definitely sought after by Justin Herbert. Gerald Everett should be returning to action this week. He has one of the easiest matchups against the Cardinals, who are giving points away to the tight end position. Austin Eckler, obviously. On the flip side for the Cardinals, is Kyler Murray in, or is it still Colt McCoy this week? I can't recall off the top of my head. I haven't seen anything regarding Kyler Murray being out.
Well, he was supposed to be playing, but
okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I think he is supposed to play.
Yeah. Okay. James Conner, kind of again touchdown or bust kind of guy. I feel. Wide receiver. Let's.
I was just going to say it is a great matchup. I mean, Chargers really struggle against the run, and because if Murray is limited and his sort of rushing is limited, I feel as though Connor might take a little bit more of that load. So I feel fairly good about Connor. But I think probably the most interesting thing to talk about here is what they're actually going to look like in terms of their passing game and the targets that we've seen Nuke Hopkins have, how that then balances up kind of going forwards with both him and Hollywood on the field at the same time for the first time.
Yeah, no, 100% agree. Trey McBride, love the thought of the experiment. Just not working for me, for anybody for fantasy purposes. On the defensive side of the ball, hold on, a quick question before we get to IDP. Jared Amaya, who should I start, Geno or Justin Fields? Well, definitely Geno, because we think Justin is not starting this week. I don't know if they've technically declared him out, but it's looking like he's going to be out. So definitely Geno Smith this week.
And Geno's got a great matchup this week. I think it's a big Geno week.
So thanks for the question, Jared. IDP. Zaven Collins, Buda, Jalen Thompson, referring to Buda Baker and Jalen Thompson. Yeah. Anybody else here for?
Isaiah Simmons has been really good. He's played really more in the slot than in previous years where he didn't have a position. Some people in the biz call it the like a hover corner, hover safety. I don't like to use those terms. They seem pedantic and somewhat made up, but it is definitely where Isaiah Simmons' strength has been, is utilization of his versatility on the field. And that's the one thing I've noticed it's really been about the last 5-6 weeks now. We're starting to see him get comfortable in a role, and comfort, man, that just goes a long way. It really does in defining just that upside and see how you can go moving forward. And last week was rough because he did miss a little bit of time in the game, I believe. I think he only played like 40 snaps. And so the volume wasn't there as much as it had been in previous weeks. And he was averaging almost 55 to 60 snaps a game over the past like 5-6. And so only getting in 40 snaps last week really hurt the upside. But prior to that, we saw 7 tackles, 6 tackles, 8 tackles, 13 tackle week against Philly. I don't expect that type of production, but I do think that there is worth noting. We'll put that in that column, the worth noting column.
Got a comment here from Brian Ford. Nate, top 4 zany hover safety mark. You should put that in your Twitter handle bio. In your bio, you should do that. That is hilarious. Got another question from Jared over on Facebook. Isaiah Pacheco or Treylon Burks to start? Ooh, Jonathan, you look very conflicted right there.
Yeah, because I listed Pacheco as one of my sits on the start and sit article. Not because I don't think he's a good player, but it's because he's not seeing targets at all. I think he's seen 2 the whole season. And so it means that he's touchdown dependent. Last week he ran for over 100 yards, but I think he got something like 10.1 points because he's just getting rushing yards. So he's got a really, really safe floor, but there's just, Nate, I'm sure you can sort of speak more to this as the Chiefs fan, but it seems as though he's just got kind of limited upside with McKinnon there as the goal line, as the third down back, and then around the goal line, they're doing all sorts of crazy jet motion stuff and pop passes, and so it's not necessarily him that's going to get those red zone touches.
Yeah, it had been CEH that was really, it was Pacheco in between the 20s, CEH and some of those high value touches. Why that is, I don't really know exactly. It's not like Edwards-Helaire was terribly efficient in the red zone. He only averaged 2.5 yards per carry inside the red zone, but he did, he got into the end zone 3 times. It's really his receiving work for CEH that was more important. That's where he saw a touchdown on 50% of his receptions and targets, because it was 6 for 6. But I think without CEH there, maybe we'll see more Pacheco, because it was pretty evident last week. We saw that Pacheco has burst. Even Carrie noted, she's like, I like the way that guy runs, because he just constantly, they're powerful like pistons with legs going. He's not choppy little quick steps, and he gets through. And that to me in the red zone is the type of back that I want. I don't want, as much as I like dancing, moving around, because everybody knows Nate likes dance, foremost dance, and then football, and then Dave is up here. So Dave, dance, football is my order. That's my order of like and love.
Nate Revolution, that's the game he plays.
That is just by myself.
When no one's watching. Actually.
When no one's watching. I'm starting Pacheco myself, if that's the whole goal of this, is to answer the question, I guess, instead of tiptoe around it.
I'm taking Burks. Pacheco is on a shorter leash than the victims in Silence of the Lambs. Like he's got way too many people behind him. You got Rojo. Don't forget about Rojo. Rojo's there. He was efficient. I think if he has a few bad carries, he's in the doghouse straight away with Andy Reid. So I just don't want to rely on him having to have a great rushing game. To your point, he got 100 yards last week, but there was nothing really that impressed me. He wasn't, working out the backfield. He wasn't getting good blocking. I don't know. I don't think Pacheco is the answer. Treylon Burks, man. Who is there to throw to in Tennessee? Robert Woods. That's
pretty much it.
Austin Hooper.
Yeah,
But,
there's not much. And
there's not
then,
much.
and you know, as far as the leash that he has, and I actually thought the exact same thing. I was waiting for that opportunity for Pacheco to kind of slip up and see what the result was going to be. And we saw it a few weeks back. His fumble that was huge in the game. The very next series, they went right back to Pacheco and actually gave him the first carry. So, but I still worry about that, Dave. So I'm not like saying you're wrong with that, because I think that Andy Reid is quick to know what's in the best benefit for the team. But I was shocked to see them go right back to him. And so maybe the leash isn't as short as I was thinking, as you were thinking as well. But it is something worth noting for sure. I think this option is closer than I'm making it sound. Like I said, it's Pacheco and then Traylon Burks is dumpster. That's not the case.
I am going to confuse Jared more. I'm going to go with Dave. I'm going to go Traylon Burks here for the reasons he just described.
Yeah.
So yeah, great confusion. Thanks, Jared, for tuning in. All right, let's go to the defensive side of the ball for the Chargers. Drew Tranquil, Derwin James.
Bosa, not Bosa. Sorry, wrong team.
Yeah, I wish it was
Khalil Mack.
Khalil Mack. Yeah, thank you.
Jeez.
Those three for IDP there. Notice you're Adderley this week. Okay, let's go to the next game here. Vegas, Seattle, Geno. Definitely think is must start. Derek Carr, we said earlier, has a good matchup this week. Devontae Adams, Josh Jacobs. On the flip side, Kenneth Walker. I think DK and Tyler Lockett are fine plays here. For the defensive side of the ball, you're starting Jordan Brooks. Cody Barton, every time he leaves, he just reels you back in, and then he reels you back in, and then you remember why you let him go. I don't know about you, Nate, but I feel like I find more consistent plays, even with potentially a lower floor, and I would feel more confident than Cody Barton. But am I wrong to think that? Do you think?
I mean, no, you're not wrong to think that. I think that's, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, you never be fooled again. Isn't that what
George Bush said? That's right.
Yeah. And that's true. And that's Cody Barton. He just big play against Tampa a few weeks back was that interception, which was the first time Brady had been picked in whatever it was. At least it was the last touch. It was the last interception since his divorce, I believe is how that goes. So that was pivotal. I mean, it was huge. It was the reason why he scored 80 points. So I don't look at splash plays, but I just can't trust it. It's too volatile.
All right. There's a defensive back for the Seattle Seahawks that I am just completely blanking on. Not Quandre Diggs.
Woolen?
Ryan Neal?
Ryan Neal. Yeah. What are your thoughts on Ryan Neal?
Just what you're thinking. Ryan Neal, plenty of box snaps. I think that it's going to be, this seems like it's a Josh Jacobs game that Keanu Neal could exploit as far as like high volume or high floor in tackles. I might think that Vegas just might air it out. Are they pissed off now finally? I mean, they have nothing to play for. Really, do they?
No,
3-7.
No. Yeah.
A top 3 pick and a new quarterback, I think.
Hey, yep. That's great.
For the Raiders here, Hollywood and I on Shoot the Gap a couple weeks ago, we had this bet here, this water bet, as far as who would play well, Jayon Brown or Luke Masterson. And it was Jayon Brown 5.3 points to Luke Masterson's 1.5. So I feel like a winner here. But Denzel Perryman, obviously, when healthy, is the go-to IDP linebacker here. Tyler Hall had a great week last week, but again, not somebody I'm super high on. Max Crosby should have a great week this week in this matchup.
He's been saving my staff league team. He's just like guaranteed like 20 points every week.
Another defensive lineman who put up a dud in London, or was it Germany? Germany last 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Uchenna Nwosu, I think that was a fluke. I think he comes back and he's productive this week for IDP. Definitely been under the radar player this year for IDP purposes at the defensive lineman position. Okay, let's go to the next game in the 425. One of the 425s here. We got the Rams. We got the Chiefs. Who is the quarterback for the Rams this week?
I don't think they've announced it completely. I mean, I think that did anybody hear anything different yet? Because last I saw, it's
they announced it. It's number 16. I forget his name.
Bryce Perkins.
That's the one.
Yeah. That's what I thought it was supposed to be. But I believe that there was still speculation that Wolford could potentially start, but I didn't think that was an option.
Their season's over. I think they just trying anything.
And what we said earlier, they're playing for nothing, joking about Vegas, and Jonathan said, top 3 draft pick and a quarterback. You're the Rams. You're not even playing for that. You're playing. You're giving somebody. It's like, hey. So then it's like, is that their motivation? When to prevent their draft pick from being too valuable? I mean, is that what's on the wall? That's their Ted Lasso believe. It's really long written, but just don't suck bad enough so Detroit doesn't take our top pick and we can't have to look back at this season. Remember that.
Actually, speaking of which, have we discussed the World Cup yet with Jonathan?
Oh yeah.
No, I already said that if the US had won, there was absolutely no way that I would have joined this call.
I love how
good win for Australia yesterday as well.
I know. I was shocked. That was very surprising, to be honest. I thought maybe we get a draw out of that, but we actually got a good chance to advance to the second round.
Yeah.
So we'll see. Been some surprises this morning. You see, Canada's beating Belgium. I did.
Morocco beat Belgium, I think, and then Canada. I saw that Canada are up as well. So
Canada up, right now, and Morocco beat Belgium. It was wild. Been some crazy results. Yeah. Sorry, wrong football, guys.
Or right football, depends who you ask.
Yeah, if you ask the rest of the world, the right football.
Right, exactly.
You ask the United States players in Canada, So, anywho, so for the Rams, obviously potentially no Allen Robinson. I think they were saying he's going towards being out. I don't know if that's been officially declared. So Skoranek and maybe Van Jefferson for the boomer bust. Yuck.
It's just Higbee for me. I think Higbee is the only guy that I'm even a little bit excited about, just because I think there'll be volume. Other than that, I'm not playing anyone. The question is more on the KC side. How early are they up to the point where they just start resting people?
That's a good question.
Like obviously you're playing Kelsey, you're probably playing Juju, whatever, but are they going to play like 2 quarters, 3 quarters?
Yeah, and that's a great question. And does that mean that is Justin Watson a name to potentially consider in this matchup, where he could see an increase of snaps if they do take it easy on Juju and they get up early enough and maybe they just start to have fun? And I don't know. I don't know that approach, because what everybody said is the right thing to say is, we don't take the Rams lightly. They're well-coached team. They're blah, 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 blah. They have a good defense, and they have good playmakers on defense. But I don't think I think they get up enough that it could turn into exactly what you're saying.
Is there any Rams running back that excites you at all?
No, not even a little bit.
I'm curious. Maybe that's the word I'll use. I'm curious to see Kyron Williams if he sees a bump in snaps this week. That's as far as my curiosity will go.
So no Cam Akers? You're not starting Cam?
No, I'm not. I just start. I mean, I get it. It's like, well, you take away all these weapons, somebody's bound to step up. So maybe catch lightning in the bottle and get the opportunity of who's going to get. I understand that rationale, but if I'm in the playoff hunt right now, I want to go with a little bit more consistency than maybe going boomer bust just yet. Even though we're just,
they're also one of the least efficient rushing teams in the league. So it's not as if there was there were all of these yards being created and you didn't know which one was going to pop off. It was like no one was creating yards.
Right.
They remind me of the 2017 to 2018 Jaguars. 1 minute they're going to the AFC Championship and they're absolute beast of a team. Then the next minute they remember they're the Jaguars. The Rams have just completely done a 180. I'm very surprised because they didn't lose too many pieces, right? I mean, how do you go from? Yeah, pretty much.
I think there were a couple of changes on the offensive line, but which kind of had
speaking of the offensive line, let's go to the defensive side of the ball. And Nate, in your IDP waiver wire article, you mentioned Frank Clark as being somebody that you could potentially pick up here off of waivers that should have a good game this week.
Yeah, I think the whole defensive line as a whole is in a good prime spot. We've seen every week the Rams' offensive line is just terrible, and they can't really stop anybody. So it wouldn't shock me if it's Frank Clark or if it's Chris Jones, even Derek Nottie, George Karlaftis. I'll just start rattling off everybody on the team, and eventually one of those will hit, and someone maybe will listen and be like, I think Nate said Derek Nottie's name. It's not as easy as that because I don't want to say I've not believed in Frank Clark because since he came over from Seattle, I think he's been a letdown as a whole for the money. But last week, he looked rejuvenated. And I know this sounds crazy to think, but I think maybe with his off-the-field issues behind him finally, I think his court dates are all done. I think all of his, I don't know all the terms, arraignments, et cetera, are all completed. Maybe that's just a huge load off his shoulders and he's fresh. He hasn't played as many snaps as he has normally. And so that might bode well. But I think more it's just the matchup. Him and Chris Jones have really solid matchups, and playing alongside Chris Jones really helps out your one-on-ones and not getting doubled.
Right. A name that I never thought I would suggest, but the past 4 weeks has been playing well, has been Leonard Floyd. 4 sacks in 4 weeks. Let's not forget they still have Aaron Donald on that defensive line for the Rams. They still are going to be playing hard and applying pressure. So I would be surprised if you see Floyd pop off for another sack this week in a futile effort. Another player who I'm always going to be rooting for him in terms of IDP because the cornerback situation is always so murky. And that's Jalen Ramsey. The guy makes tackles. I mean, the past 4 weeks, 6 tackles, 9 tackles, 6 tackles, 7 tackles, interception for Fantasy Pros IDP scoring. He's getting you close to 13 points a game. But really, it's Bobby Wagner for the linebackers in the IDP plays here for the Rams with certainty. But again, too, under the radar plays, if they call it that, Leonard Floyd and Jalen Ramsey. For the Chiefs, we mentioned Nick Bolton. I think Willie Gay has a great week this week. He's been playing lights out since returning from injury, applying pressure, applying the pressure to the quarterback, which you mentioned earlier. The offensive line is atrocious, so that should continue on this week, as well as the tackle floor. I think is going to serve him well. Anybody else here for the Chiefs and or Rams for IDP?
I mean, I don't know if I touched on L'Jarius Sneed at all enough, but I just don't see the Rams doing much offensively to warrant enough players across that defense to be viable outside of Bolton and Willie Gay, like you said, and then either Chris Jones, Frank Clark. So not that much on either side there. Nick Scott has gotten a little play for the Rams as of late. We saw him last year really turn it on towards the end of the year, and I think that's what he's done briefly over the last, what's it been, probably 3 or 4 weeks now. I think he's had some decent production. I mean, he's played in 10 games. Yeah, he had the 9 tackles back in week 10, only 5 tackles last week, but it's hit and miss with the Rams. They should be on the field a ton, so Nick Scott could be a super deep, intriguing person of notice.
All right, let's go to the next 425 matchup here. We got the Saints, we got the 49ers. Let's stick with defense first. Caden Ellis has just been playing lights out since coming on a relief of Pete Werner. Demario Davis has been your steady, consistent linebacker there. We saw last week, no Cameron Jordan. Is he out this week or is he back this week?
I don't think he's supposed to play.
Right. So then Davenport was also Marcus Davenport was also out last week. So Carl Granderson, again, somebody you wrote up in your IDP waiver wire article, played really well, had 1.5 sacks, 7 tackles, 15.5 IDP fantasy points with Fantasy Pro scoring. Somebody to keep an eye on if you need a defensive lineman in a pinch. On the flip side, Hufanga, Tenelo Hufanga, you mentioned it a couple weeks ago, played a lot of box snaps earlier in the season, middle of the season, but he's been slowly being pushed back, and you're seeing a lot of his, meaning further back on the defensive side of the fall. You're seeing big plays be the saving grace here. He didn't get any really big plays last week. Aside from Fred Warner, Drake Greenlaw, Nick Bosa, anybody else tickling your fancy here for the 49ers for IDP?
Tickling my fancy.
That's probably not the best way I could have gone about that, but it's what I did. So
you reached deep into your bag of euphemisms, and that's what you came up with. So it's good. I got to pat myself on the back. Thinking of the word euphemism that fast on a early morning for me, probably the highlight of my day so far. So I'm going to go ahead and thank you, Jonathan. Go ahead and on that note, I'll let you guys wrap this bad boy up.
And then we can talk like, wow, did you hear him say euphemism?
Exactly.
How do you even spell that? Seriously, though, how do you spell it?
Yeah, exactly.
Without Googling it, someone try.
Which is exactly it's I like what's up?
I got a quick interruption. I got a little bit of trouble in a league last week, right? So the guy I was playing against had Kyler Murray, and as soon as he was announced that he officially was out, I did the dick move of picking up Colt McCoy. Now
that's not a dick move. That's smart.
But I already pretty much had the game in the bag, right? Mm-hmm. And when people were saying, like, why didn't you just let him pick it up? Because I was saying there's still points for and points against. And if it comes down to the end of the season and I don't make it by 20 points, it'll be because of that. So was it a dick move or not?
Never for me. The only move
you
that I
have done the exact same thing to you. So
yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, what's the one move? And honestly, I'll go on record as saying that I don't think it's even a dick move. They call that roster shuffle or something, where you can pick up where you pick up a person, then drop them back to the waivers. And in some leagues, they go to waivers and you can't pick them back up. Others I've seen allow everybody else to pick them up. I think that's going to be the norm going forward. Is the league will put them on waivers to only the team that dropped them. And he will be a free agent on that same day to everybody else to prevent that roster churn. So that, because that's kind of a dick move. If you go in and you just pick up everybody and drop them just to prevent that.
Yeah, I think that's different. But yeah.
It is. But I will say that. We'll ask. What's up? Hello, Nate.
I think most formats make you hold on to them for a day before they'll go on waivers. So if you just pick them up and drop them, they become free agents. But if you hold on to them overnight, then I think they go on official waivers. But I've done that before.
I'm sure you have. You're kind of a dick. So that doesn't shock me.
And that is what Nate from IBT Media, Fantasy Pros, and Trophy Spec Razzball. Well, you're everywhere. Roto Underworld. Welcome, first of all, to the show. That's where you're walking into. People calling each other dicks on the pregame show. So that's welcome.
You know, the way I look at it, I've got another Nate here. It's like family anyway, so it's fine. It's just like my Thanksgiving dinner 2 days ago. I mean, you know, it's how it rolls, right?
Yeah, this is our Thanksgiving dinner. We're letting out what's the Seinfeld thing?
Festivus.
Festivus. That's the thing.
Festivus for the rest of us.
Air out our grievances.
I love it.
So Nate, let's actually let you answer this question. You got this one over on the YouTube here. Quarterback question. What are your thoughts here? Tom Brady, Matt Ryan, or T. Law this week as your quarterback start?
I would probably start Trevor Lawrence. I think the upside here for Jacksonville is much higher than Matt Ryan. Tom Brady's washed. Let's be honest. He's hardly fantasy relevant. Unless you're playing Superflex and you need a second quarterback, Trevor Lawrence is the play here, I think.
Mm-hmm. Very nice. Yeah, we were just talking about earlier with Christian Kirk, Jonathan, was that they're not as horrible against the pass over the course of the season, so you definitely could have some upside there. So cool, very cool. We are currently discussing the 49ers and the Saints. We went over IDP. Going for offense here, obviously you're starting Christian McCaffrey. I'm not scared of starting Elijah Mitchell. I think he has decent flex value. He's getting the opportunity. I think he had like close to 50% of the touches his first week with McCaffrey, his first week back rather. Last week was kind of scary in the sense that you heard Joe and Troy say when talking to Kyle Shanahan, you haven't included Elijah Mitchell at all in the first half. What's going on? Is it because you have too many weapons to get on the field at once? And Kyle Shanahan said, yes, that is exactly the problem. That's why you haven't seen Elijah Mitchell. And what did they do in the second half? They started featuring him more. That would be my only concern here with having so many playmakers on this team. That being the case, look, when he's been running the ball very well. And again, the Saints team, I don't know. I'm like I said, I'm not too scared of Elijah Mitchell as a flex throw this week. Obviously, you're starting Debo, Kittle, and Brandon Ayuk, who you want to talk about a resurgence from last year, being in the doghouse, to finishing strong, to just playing super consistent this year. Had a great game last week versus the Cardinals. The secondary, again, for the Saints does nothing to scare me. On the flip side, though, we have the Saints here. Alvin Kamara has a tough matchup against this 49ers defense. I will say, though, the area where I'm kind of positive on is Olave. I think he's kind of quarterback-proof, situation-proof, matchup-proof. He's just been playing lights out. Targets have been there. Juwan Johnson, tight end. He needs more love in fantasy circles. I feel like he's been not talked about enough. Just super consistent, great red zone threat. But that's all I can really say. Alvin Kamara, like I said, has a tough matchup. I would not be surprised if you obviously you're starting Alvin Kamara, but at the same time, I think you should fade your expectations a little bit. Is that crazy? We'll call you Nathan. Nathan, what are your thoughts here?
So I'm a little worried about Chris Olave just because of Andy Dalton and because San Francisco's been getting pressure, and I feel like they're going to keep Dalton moving around just like they did last week, which is why I had concerns about Olave. He still ended up getting the touchdown, but I think the guy in this offense that's going to see the majority of the targets this week is going to be Juwan Johnson. And nobody saw this coming with Juwan Johnson except my wife called it like week 2 or week 3. But
Nice.
She's smarter than me, trust me.
Same here.
But I think that Juwan Johnson is the guy who gets a touchdown this week. Again, he keeps scoring touchdowns. He's got, 5 in the last 5 games. He had 2 in week 7 against Arizona. I think they're going to lean on him, and I am concerned about Kamara against this defense as well, but I think he's going to get enough receiving work where he's going to be okay as a start. Outside of that, I don't like anything else in New Orleans. I'm starting Andy Dalton because I don't have a choice. I have a 3-quarterback league I play in like a moron.
Wow.
We have a rule set by Matthew Berry in this league where every week the highest scoring team has to drop one, or the lowest scoring team has to drop one of their starters.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a vampire league? Is that what that's called?
No, we call it the Chaos League.
That seems fitting.
Yeah, it's with we came up with it. We have to start 2 tight ends, 3 quarterbacks. Then we have 4 other regular flex slots with 12 wild rules. I'm starting Andy Dalton in that league because I don't have a choice. I understand that there are some people who don't have a choice, and you'll get 10, 15 points out of him this week if you're lucky, you hope for. But yeah, Juwan Johnson, man, I think he's a solid play this week.
And how many teams are in that league?
12.
And if you're talking, so is Bryce Perkins actually being started this week?
That is a good question. More than likely, yes, because I went to try and roster him yesterday and he was gone. So
there it is.
Let's
there
take
it
a
is.
look here.
The first Bryce Perkins snipe of the season belongs to.
So I will tell you, it belongs to my buddy Jeff Bell, for whom J Bell told us.
Hey, Jeff.
Football
Yes.
guys. Yep.
Now, is he starting Bryce Perkins though? He is not. He still has Derek Carr and Jacoby Brissett to start on top of Josh Allen, so he doesn't even need Bryce Perkins this week.
Well, he's playing the game within the game. Keep away. He's playing keep away.
Exactly.
His opponent, however, is starting who does he have here? Because they're super flex, to be fair. Alexander Madison and Mike Evans are the other team's super flex players. So that's what this league is. It's chaos until you get your roster right before everybody else. And then for you, it's not chaos.
So
go
ahead, Dave. What's up?
Take a full circle. We'll talk. I want to talk about Elijah Mitchell. I know you're saying you're not scared about Elijah Mitchell, and I agree with you there. I'm more scared about Christian McCaffrey. I mean, he was efficient with his touches. And last week, watching him on the sidelines was like Oliver Twist asking for more soup. Please, sir, can I have some more? Like, he wanted the touches. That's what they brought him in there for. And Elijah Mitchell's efficient. So I'm concerned about CMC and him actually putting up running back one numbers, because Elijah Mitchell's your flex. Like you said, you're not worried about him. But Christian McCaffrey, are you putting him out there with confidence, knowing that he's going to get you 15, 20 points?
I don't know.
So, I mean, as long as he's catching the ball, he's fine.
Yeah.
But if they're not going to be throwing the ball to him as much, yeah, that is a concern, because the last 2 weeks, 14 carries, 38 yards, 7 carries, 39 yards. He had a touchdown in week 10 against the Chargers, but everything's been receiving for him. 4 catches, 7 catches, 39 yards, 67 yards. But I'm not scared, because I expect him to be just as involved this week as he has been the previous 2 weeks. I feel like his floor is probably around, well, it looks like it's about 17 points.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the biggest, curveball we're getting is I think that super high ceiling play, the 35-point week, might be negated. It could be gone for sure, because I think that's the smarter approach for a team that is in a wide open NFC. The 49ers have the best thing they can ask for right now is depth at pretty much all positions. And so,
and they're getting healthier as well.
Correct. And so that will go in, if your fantasy team, unfortunately, which sucks, because that's going to be the case, is it does limit that. But to be fair, I am going to say that I'm actually still happy that I have CMC healthy, which is a shitty way to draft a player, is thinking that by week 12, because I bet the over under, in all fairness, with everybody here, if I had to say before the season started, at what week would you have Christian McCaffrey as your starting running back till that cutoff date, that finish line? I think week 8, week 9 was probably would be one of the more popular answers. I don't know from everybody. Nate, were you optimistic on CMC staying healthy throughout the season?
I wasn't, and because of that, I didn't really draft him in redraft, and I moved a lot of my dynasty shares of him. But that was predicated on him staying in Carolina. True. Now that this is a better situation. Now, like you said, we're going to see fewer of those 30-plus point boom weeks, because, let's be honest, they don't need to use him like that. They have other weapons on this offense. They've got Debo. Brandon Ayuk has looked good. They've got Elijah Mitchell, who can spell him. They didn't have those options in Carolina that were that reliable, or intelligent coaching also, of course, was a problem. Which, yay, Nebraska gets Matt Rule, and I'm a CU fan, so I get to watch that program continue to burn. I'm excited. But now that he's in San Francisco, they're not going to drive him into the ground, which is good, because now he's actually going to stay healthy. The overusage doesn't become a concern for me with McCaffrey, which is where I think we saw him. That's why he was hurt so much the last 2 seasons. His body was like, I can't do this every season. You're asking me to carry the entire team on my back. He doesn't have to do that anymore. You're still like if his floor is 17 points every week, sign me up, man. That is beautiful for fantasy.
It has opened up George Kittle, I'll say that, bringing in Christian McCaffrey and Elijah Mitchell, because they got to respect the run game. But to your point, you've got Debo Samuel and Ayuk playing lights out, so you got DBs covering them. It's really opening up holes for George Kittle, where week 1 to 5, George Kittle was non-existent.
Yeah, and you bring in, from a health perspective earlier, like we said, Trent Williams being back means Kittle doesn't have to block as much. Having a productive run game without Kittle needing to block is exactly what you're saying, Dave. And that's dangerous. That's scary dangerous when you don't have to keep him in line. He can split out, and you've got threats like Debo and Ayuk from all over the field.
And actually, one player that we haven't spoken about in all of this is Jimmy G, and he is it was someone that Tyler and I spoke about on Dynasty 365 a couple of weeks ago as a really good super flex trade target, especially for the end of the year. That he's been really efficient. He's genuinely been a good quarterback, and they've got some good matchups coming up as well. So he's a great streaming option again this week.
Yeah, Seattle, Washington, Vegas for your fantasy playoffs.
Yes.
Num.
Very nice. All right, let's go to the Sunday night football matchup. We got the Green Bay Packers and the Philadelphia Eagles. Let's start with Green Bay here. In terms of fantasy points allowed, the Eagles are allowing the fewest points to quarterbacks, the 18th most points to running backs, 25th to wide receivers, 25th to tight ends. Not optimal here for Philadelphia. We talked about earlier, for Green Bay rather. We talked about earlier that this has the potential to be a straight up bloodbath here. We talked about Christian Watson, how he's kind of emulating Gabe Davis. The Gabe Davis 2.0 effect, where the yardage is not consistently there, but the touchdowns are. Robert Tonyan has been a disappointment. It's basically the Aaron Jones show. And that makes me hesitant because, when the team becomes one-dimensional, what are you hoping for? A.J. Dillon, you want to talk about disappointments as a zero RB drafter this year. That's right up there with Kareem Hunt as far as disappointments there. So it's really, for me, the one I'm feeling the most confident in is Aaron Jones. And even then, I'm kind of concerned against this Philadelphia front. They got eviscerated in the running game by Washington. What did they do the next 2 days? They got Linval Joseph. They got Ndamukong Suh. They're shoring up that defensive line. They're like, hey, we're getting these massive bodies. You're not just going to run over us anymore going forward, which is credit to Howie Roseman. That's exactly what they needed to do. And the fact they're able to do that so quickly shows a lot there. On the flip side, we look at the Eagles, obviously Jalen Hurts. I'm more excited for A.J. Brown this week. I think A.J. Brown is going to have a monster game, especially those who play in like standard scoring or half PPR scoring. I think the yardage totals are going to be there for him this week. No Dallas Goedert. Jonathan, who are you liking from this matchup here for Green Bay, Philadelphia? I know you're the resident Packers fan. What are your thoughts here?
Yeah, Aaron Jones is the only one that I suppose Christian Watson, just because of his efficiency, I suppose, on the Green Bay side. But, I mean, the Eagles are allowing something like the 10th fewest points to wide receivers. So I wouldn't be at all surprised if we saw a sort of low floor game from Christian Watson. I think, to me, I know we spoke about it before, but it's the running game for Philly as well, given how susceptible Green Bay have been on the ground. So, I think Jalen Hurts on the ground. I think Miles Sanders as well is a really good flex option this week.
What's crazy with Aaron Jones is that of the 5 pop-off games that he's had on the season, they've come at the most, I would say, unlikely of times. You get Dallas back in week 10, who Dallas, as far as their interior and run-stopping ability, I didn't expect 138 and nearly 6 per carry. Buffalo in week 8, definitely didn't expect, over 7 per carry. The Patriots in week 4, nearly 7 a carry. The Bears maybe in week 2 at that point, doesn't really matter. But it's every other week right now. Nate, are you a superstitious-esque or like every other, this is the other week now because it's gone back to back. So this is the big week for him. This is Aaron Jones. Are you willing to put your money on over 8? I'm going to go 85 yards rushing.
You know what? Against Philly, because they're not going to be able to do much else against this defense. Yeah, probably. I mean, I think it's Aaron Jones, and I think it's probably Christian Watson has a big day because he's not going to have Jair Alexander on, or not going to have Darius Slay on him.
Right.
So I could see it being a big Christian Watson, Aaron Jones day, and literally nothing else from this offense. A.J. Dillon, like you said, man, 0 RB trap. That hurts.
What are you doing with Aaron Jones if you got him? Because, I mean, his deep ball game is gone, right? I mean, he's the dude is it's all like little check downs. The guy's handing out more checks than the U.S. government stimulus program. You know, he just doesn't have it in him anymore. I mean, are we what? Is he washed? Like, are you playing him? What other options can you throw instead of Aaron Rodgers?
I can't play him this week. I mean, he's got a broken thumb as well. I think if they're smart, they lean on the run or attempt to, and possibly shut him down. And for the rest of the year,
they've been trailing most of the time. Can't run the ball when you're down 14 points.
Yeah,
it's true. But it's I certainly wouldn't play him this week.
All right, the running trend I feel like we've had for this show so far has been the either or. Nate, Russell Wilson or Aaron Rodgers in a must start for you this week?
Oh, can I just trade my whole team?
You cannot. This is the new chaos league that you didn't even know you're even part of yet, but now you are.
You're definitely not in the playoffs if this is your situation.
Exactly.
Don't laugh. I actually have a league where I'm second. Those are my two right. I was actually going to ask you guys, do I play Russell Wilson or Aaron Rodgers?
I mean, they're up against Carolina. Carolina's got J.C. Horn, and that's about all they have on their defense. I'm probably going to start Russell Wilson over Aaron Rodgers this week and then cry
a lot
at some point tonight.
Let's flip over to IDP. Let's start with Green Bay. They lose Rashawn Gary. Preston Smith has been pretty woeful, except for last week. He had a decent game when looking at Fantasy Pros IDP scoring. Quay Walker, coming off of a bad game, had a really productive game with 11 total tackles. We mentioned the running game here for Philadelphia being something to keep an eye on, which could definitely help Quay Walker's floor. Somebody that I'm excited about is Adrian Amos. He's been playing really well with no Devondre Campbell, I believe, this week again. I definitely see Amos playing closer to the line of scrimmage and helping more against the run and getting those tackle numbers. Mm-hmm. For Philadelphia, man, outside of C.J. Gardner-Johnson, who else are we starting with confidence? Because everybody makes plays, and it's kind of hard to narrow down week to week who is the consistent one there. Nate, what are your thoughts here?
I mean, it's like you said, it's tough. At this point, assuming that it's going to be essentially Aaron Jones and nothing else, once you get past Brandon Graham, Javon Hargrave, Fletcher Cox, Hassan Reddick, you're going to have TJ Edwards. And it's going to be TJ Edwards probably involved in a double-digit tackle role if Green Bay can actually sustain enough drives to warrant that. But CJ Gardner-Johnson is my play as far as a high-level DB in an opportunity where he's had splash play after splash play weeks. He's had multiple interception weeks, and against an Aaron Rodgers. Banged up thumb, quite a bit. That is about it. You're right. There's too much to go and isolate just one player. As Brandon Graham's my guy. I don't see that matchup this week like I've seen previous weeks where I feel comfortable with an interior and edge rusher on either side.
All right, let's wrap up this last game here for the week. Pittsburgh, Indianapolis. Pittsburgh for IDP. I like Alex Highsmith this week. Obviously, you're starting TJ Watt. Minka is back, right? This week he was battling injuries the past couple weeks, but I believe he is back this week. Definitely, though, he's more of a big play, free safety, playing in coverage than up at the line of scrimmage box safety.
Right.
On the flip side, Zaire Franklin is just a tackling machine. Despite his PFF grades of being highly inefficient, this guy is getting you the tackles, and I think that's all you really want there. Kwity Paye has a really good matchup this week against Dan Moore of the Yannick Ngakoue has a really good matchup this week against Dan Moore of the Pittsburgh Steelers. For the past 2 weeks. Yeah. Dan Moore's out?
No, Kwity Paye.
Oh, he's out. Damn it. Well, that sucks. Okay. Well, he had a good matchup. Had he been playing?
I think so. I'll look. I'll let you keep talking.
Thank you. Bobby Okereke has also a really good matchup at linebacker. So for offensive purposes here, we got Matt Ryan back. Michael Pittman has been restored to life. Yay, thank God for those who drafted him and who had him pre-ranked as a wide receiver 15 in their pre-draft rankings. Jonathan Taylor has been rounding back in the form. Najee Harris, we've seen come to life last week. Nathan, what are your thoughts here on starting him this week? Are you confident? Are you yes, they're doing it. They're getting him back in this game. The offensive line is doing something. Or was he a product of the matchup last week, do you think? Yeah, you muted. I gotcha. One second.
Here we go. Okay, so I like Najee this week. Now, I do think he was a product of matchup last week, but Jalen Warren's out. Indy's defense has been pretty decent. I think you have to start Najee, but you have to kind of like measure your expectations with what he could be this week. He could be a high-end RB1. He could be a low-end RB2. That's going to be kind of his range against Indy this week, but I think it's more likely he's in that like mid-tier RB1 range when all's said and done.
I don't know. I'm a little bit skeptical. Najee Harris is like the McRib. It shows up for a few weeks, gets us excited, then leaves,
It's giving its farewell tour. Apparently, it's going off the menu from now on.
Thank God.
So
you left off the diarrhea part, Dave, where it also
well, that's what you might get with Harris. Look, if you have Rashad White, are you playing him over Harris?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, if you drafted a right or picked up decent waivers, if you got no choice, I get it. If you went very wide receiver heavy, but if there's better options, I just don't know how confident I am going into the week, especially if you need a win, rely on Harris to get 100 yards and a touchdown,
I was speaking incorrectly. I said it was Yannick Ngakoue who I meant earlier as having a good matchup this week for the Colts at defensive line.
Well, Quiddy Pay to answer that in case people are wondering. There's still it's a non-zero chance that he does play. He hasn't practiced all week, but he wasn't included on the final injury report by Jeff Saturday, which I don't know what that move is determined to do, because why would you start him? I don't understand. I mean, it's that ankle injury doesn't seem like he's 100% yet, and but the hell do I know? Jeff Saturday's undefeated as a coach, I believe, and I'm not.
Well,
Actually,
1-1.
No,
1-1.
Oh yeah, one. Oh yeah.
But he almost, dude, I got to tell you, I did not see him keeping pace with Philly last week. I thought that game was going to be a blowout. So it makes you wonder, maybe Green Bay can beat Philly.
Hell, Washington beat Philly. Anything can happen in this crazy
Easy.
Hey, Washington's good.
At what?
Well,
You are welcome back any day, any show you want. Absolutely.
Look, they're 4-1 since Heineke took over. Heineke's clearly a better quarterback than Carson Wentz. He's targeting Terry McLaurin. He's getting a running game going on this team. Like, they're a better offense with Taylor Heineke. It's kind of, well, actually, I said that before the season started and I got laughed at, but hey.
No, he's doing what he needs to do, and he's managing the game well. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's only a knock at Jorge for being a Commanders fan. It's not that I have anything against Washington whatsoever. I'm impressed with some of the movement that they've shown.
Obviously, you're starting Freiermuth at tight end. Not so obvious.
That's a good question.
Based off of who would you have in replacement?
Let's say you've got what's his name, McBride. Are you playing McBride over Freiermuth?
No,
absolutely not.
Not one bit. Yeah.
No.
Let's go here, though, the $1 million question here. If you had to start one, take that back. Who are you more confident in? Pickens, Deontay Johnson? Let's go around the frames here real quick. We'll start with you, David.
Oh, that's an awful question. I was hoping you'd leave me last. I'd say I'd have to go with Deontay Johnson. I have no faith in Pickett. I picked him up in a league, and he's sitting on my bench. And even in the super flex, I don't have enough confidence to put him in there. I don't know. Right. I'll go Johnson, even though Pickett is obviously throwing him the ball. But I can see a world where Mitch.
Sorry, you said Pickens, or did you say
Pickens? And
oh, sorry, I thought you said Pickett. My apologies. Oh no, absolutely Pickens. No, not even a question. Right. Pickens is the number one there.
Nathan.
So it's definitely Pickens. Deontay Johnson hasn't really had a finish higher than wide receiver 4 since week 3. So, and then he had 1 week where he's wide receiver 5 versus Pickens, who's seeing the volume. 2 touchdowns in his last 4 games. It's better than Deontay Johnson.
Yeah.
All right. And I believe Jonathan and Nate, you probably agree here, Pickens over Johnson.
Yeah, Pickens just the higher upside. I mean, as Nate said. Yeah.
All right. Well, that's going to wrap us up here. Thank you very much for watching the Fantasy and Frames pregame show for week 12. Nathan, man, come back anytime. You're always welcome. Any show, we're glad to have you on. David from Connecticut, as always, you're always welcome. Jonathan, Nate, great job in articles this week. check out all of our stuff here. And remember, folks, we're partnering with Roto Underworld over on our Instagram to give you IDP start information each and every week. So check that out. Subscribe on our YouTube. Follow us on all social media at Fantasy and Frames. So for Jorge, Nate, Jonathan, David, Nathan, you all have a great week. Good luck in your matchups.